Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I've got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
And welcome everybody to our Daily Gun Show. Come to you live every weeknight at midnight Eastern. Until tonight, this is the last night of the Daily Gun Show. So thanks for letting us know the audio is working. I'm trying a new thing here with what is this thing called? The XSplit. So this is $40 XSplit software right here. Oh wait, you can't see that. Can you? Could you just see that right now? I wonder. Go back over here and look. So no, all you see is this screen and that screen. Okay, so I guess I'm not screen sharing at all. Anyway, if it's working, then it's working. But guess what didn't work? Sending out an email to 32 2A activists, because they're all busy tonight, I guess. Plotting schemes for 2020, I hope. So with this, nobody can sneak in. We're using the tube tech over here. I guess I can't point to anything on the screen, but if you look at the top left, you'll see a gun tube logo next to an empty chamber, and that's what we got here, an empty chamber. It's just me in here with my own, well, 2 channels, I guess. Can I come in here? Oh yeah, look at this, boom. So I can do this, but I'm actually both of these accounts. Anyway, so I guess with all that said, we'll just watch videos, because why not? See if anybody shows up. So now that it's been triggered, maybe people will show up. We'll see how popular this video is with the 10 watchers, and they'll flock over here to get that attention. It's like the light bunch of moths. But where the hell is the thing? Click. And then, what do I just square my screen, I guess? So, boom. Yeah, look at that. Just like, I think I'm getting the hang of this. So, this is video I posted earlier today. I guess we'll watch that because you get reruns within a rerunception. Let's take a look back at 2019 and the gun websites projects. We started out the year with the same goals we always have: to unite our Second Amendment media, to encourage and facilitate as much gun-related content online as possible, both ourselves and helping others. So we started out the year scheduling some interviews. Without getting too bleak at the beginning of the video here, we weren't even, it wasn't a given that we were going to be around this year. I want to take a moment and thank Yankee and the supporters of the Yankee Marshal who efforted at the beginning of the year in January to not only get us to SHOT Show, but they really got us through the beginning of this year. It wasn't a given that we'd even be here this year, and it was their efforts and our Patreons that have kept us here and motivated to continue doing what we're doing. So we got to SHOT Show as our 14th year. We had 11 people from gun channels at SHOT Shows, a bunch of people's second or even 5th time at the show. So I think everyone had a great time, as well as having a very effective show. Gunstreamer was there and had a great show. It was Puppy's first year. It was just a good beginning of the year, a good start to the year. I came back in February and continued on with the interviews, attempting to try to do an interview each night. There's definitely more than 300 Second Amendment advocates out there still kicking, and attempted that as long as possible. It's actually quite a bit of effort to do an interview every single night, but all right, well, I've been picking with a bunch of stuff. So Now is so now is the when I go back to it, let me know if the audio is going to be working because I'm going to try going back to that screen. We're going to attempt it again here going forward. Arizona had the first of, turns out to be annual. We'll do another one, 2A rally. It was a small rally with about 300 people that showed up. And I guess it was the first of many. We'll go up and do that again in February. They're already promoting it for this year. You can see we were doing some cartooning, both to help give some resource to the members of the Gun Channels community and others that are doing Second Amendment content, but also just to exercise skills. And those were done during 2A workshops. So to create a time, a place that people could join in and ask questions about 2A content creation of any kind. And that's where some of these cartoons and some of the drawings and stuff are the result of those 2A workshops. While we had only moderate interest and success with the 2A media workshops in 2019, I have had some interest expressed in keeping them going into 2020. So we'll definitely continue to do that between the beginning of the year and SHOT Show to capitalize as much as possible on the industry getting together. We try to send stuff out every few months or so to our Patreons, the people that basically subscribe to our projects and financially keep them going. And each every other month or so, we try to send something out to say thanks. And you can see in the video a couple of results of that stuff that we've drawn or created and then sent out. So we had an opportunity, what is this, March, to go over to California and get a free robot. So this is the drive. Decided to drive past that. Oh, now I can't remember the name of it. We just drove past it. That crazy painted mountain in California. Went out to Malibu and then went up and grabbed this free robot. Pretty cool. We grabbed it though right at the beginning of the heat of the year, so it won't be till July or something that I actually get out there and get it set up. Time-wise and heat-wise, we don't have an air-conditioned place to put the robot. Again, you can see a lot of different cartoons and playing around throughout the year to encourage people on gun channels to have fun. So one of the other projects, again, to keep the Second Amendment community, the media, working together in different ways was the 2A patch batch. And the idea here was to bring a bunch of together and give them an opportunity to do a couple of things. First, get a resource for free. Get these patches for nothing so that they could learn either how to distribute them, sell them, offer them for trade, use them as incentives for some other kind of resource, but basically give Second Amendment focused organizations, what do we have, 10 or 12 of them, some resource. Additionally, it was an opportunity for us all to work together, to combine efforts to market and promote the project and do it on a crowdfunding platform and then give everyone access to the behind the scenes to see how it all works. I wish I could say it was a bigger success than it was. I mean, it was a financial success. We've got the patches made. Everyone got their patches, and I hope everyone made some kind of profit on them. It was all valid, good organizations, but there's lots of things that weren't perfect about it. But that's how we learn. We start things and we try. Talking as we go through the Clash patch batch was. So now. That wasn't the way to do it. So now are we talking without an echo?
Apparently, when I'm on mute, there's an echo, or what?
Oh no, I'm playing around on my side. Trying to figure this all out because I'm using the XSplit. Oh, you can't see that. Oh wait, can you now? Yeah, you're looking still over there.
Mm-hmm.
What am I looking at anymore? chamber screen sharing. This is confusing. So I've got the chamber over here screen sharing, and Clover's in the chamber. There you go. Don't look directly into this, or else you'll buy things from GaryWebsites.com. Buy things from GaryWebsites.com. If you look into this, you'll buy things from GaryWebsites.com. And then I'm using XSplit to connect to the chamber. Now, if you look at things inside of here, you'll buy expensive things from GaryWebsites.com. Buy expensive things from GaryWebsites.com. But I am low. All right, so then I can't do nothing about that because I'm talking to the chamber. If I talk this, does this echo or does this change the volume? Anybody?
Hadn't on my end.
Yeah, you can't change anything to Clover. So anyway, I've got the chamber open, which can hold 30-something people. I've got XSplit open. Going back to this, it's going to be confusing, but deal with it. I've got XSplit open, and one of my, I forget what they call these scenes down here. One of them is just the small monitor. So I'll go just to my small monitor. It kind of looks the same, but it's not. And then if I go to GunTube, this scene, I have it set up with the GunTube chamber over here. The GunTube chamber over here. And this is this thing. This plugin called YouTube Live Chat Viewer. So with this XSplit, what you do is you have this software. What I'm going to do is get rid of the video in the background to make it a little bit less confusing. So now it's just looking at my small monitor with the XSplit software on it. And inside the XSplit software, we've got this display and then some control panels down here. In this control panel, you display what's going to be on the screen. So I'm going to turn off the GunTube chamber. So I'm still in it, you just can't see it. I can turn it back on, toggle it, and then I can turn on and off this plugin, which is displaying all of the chat stuff. It's using an API, a plugin, to pull over the chat stuff. So I got that by going down to this little drop down and choosing a thing. Like I could choose an image somewhere, media file, go to somewhere on my computer. Yikes. Somewhere on my computer where maybe I've got a logo. And then open that, and now I've got a logo. Now I picked a transparent background, so I can shove it like here maybe, and you can see it a little easier. Anyway, I can display that. Now it's another item down here, and I can toggle it on and off. So that's one way to monitor, what's the word, like produce or direct or whatever, a stage. But then I can also set up these scenes all over the place. So I have this one that just looks at my monitor. I have this one, which is all that stuff we've been playing with. Now, if I want to get rid of that logo, because it was see, it's weird. Every time I relaunch this scene inside of XSplit, it relaunches an emulated browser. You log in into the chamber for some reason. I guess I haven't thought about that yet. But somehow it's creating a login to XSplit, to GunTube chamber because I'm logged into it through the thing. So it's an emulated, like, clone. No, it's not really a clone. What is it? It's a drone account over there just to pipe it in here. And then again, I can add another widget I have in here called YouTube Alerts. And then that's going to alert me to something. Like, if go ahead and the way to test this, someone drop like a $200 or $300 super chat in there, and then this will make an amazing thing happen. I think maybe, but I don't know what that is. That's something. We'll get rid of it. So what do? You click it, and then you click remove. What the hell is it? Remove. Anyway, so that's kind of explaining what's going on. So Clover's over here watching all this through his version of the chamber, but the idea is that I could have 30 people in the chamber. If I flip this to this kind of view, right now it's my, what is this thing, a drone? It's me, or I guess it's me, it's my drone, Clover, who's real. And then if I could have, I don't know, 32 of the other people that I sent that email to show up, we could all chat in here. You can do things like raise your hand, because when Mike built this, he made it polite. And I can look at them from two different views, like this view or this view. So that's the chamber. This is the chat room that we get piped in from YouTube. If I was the kind to acknowledge Facebook, I could put another one, go down here, grab another widget, because it'll say find more sources, and I could just go find a widget. that pipes in the Facebook chat, I must imagine. Once Gunstreamer and others get their thing going, we'll have other pipes and gizmos we can play with. It looks like Skype is in here. It's got some already built-in things like a video playlist and a whiteboard, which is kind of neat. So I can just go in here and say things like, "Hey Clover, you got a booger hanging on your nose."
Mhm.
I don't know how to delete, so now you just got a bunch of crap written on you. Sorry.
So I've got a question.
Go for it. I'm going to move this back over so it's less confusing.
So you're running this on the new computer?
Oh yeah. By far.
Okay.
So if I flip over,
It's running well. It's running well on the new computer. That's my next
you gotta
question.
tell me. This is literally the first time I'm going through all this because the duck cut me off. So
Well,
now
it seems to be fine on this end. That's why I asked.
this has got to be the most confusing because now I've got my XSplit flipped to the big screen, which where everything is. So I can go. I shouldn't show that screen probably because that's all my nuts and bolts of my YouTube connection. This is the external YouTube side. This is the tube. This is where I posted it on Gun Channels, which is a community built so that if you're interested in creating stuff like this, we'll show you how and give you a place to put it. Or if you like watching stuff made by actual human beings and not robots and clones, then Gun Channels, check it out. Of course, I posted it here just like Clover posted his crazy hippie phone chat he does earlier and some other stuff that people have been posting, Travis and Dave. And then I guess I got my Patreon open because Patreon is how we're able to do all this kind of stuff. All right, that's enough plugs. So the audio is echoing. So that's probably because I have the.
It's not echoing on my end. No, I don't. Okay. All I have is a blue screen. Yeah, it's gonna open a wormhole somewhere.
Some weirdness. You all. Please stop.
There it goes.
Blame GunTube for that. Not me. That was inevitable. It was gonna happen because of GunTube. It's, let me unscreen share here and I can
You've got an echo still.
all right, now I get
Yeah. Right. Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, if you look at analytically, if you look at who typically watches our stuff, I think most of those people are older and probably don't. They'll probably stay up, see the new year. But
Okay.
oh,
I don't know why it's not letting me. It's not letting me mute anymore.
I don't know.
Audio. So if I turn this back on, y'all are getting audio again? Oh, it's because I turned that speaker off. Yeah, so I'm going to click that microphone on, and now everybody should get the sound from me and from Clover. Okay, I'm figuring it out. So this time, I'm not screen sharing anywhere. I can screen share on X on Chamber. Now Clover can see it, and you guys can see it. It was down here that I'm having issue. There's this mic, there's this mic, and then there's this mic. And they're all actually the same mic. Speaking of mics, I bought a mic off of Amazon. It should be here. It would be here tomorrow, but it probably won't be, so it'll probably be here like Thursday or something. It's like a $50 one. Basically I went to the most reviewed and the most positive reviews, and then looked for one that was like 40 bucks, and this one was like 46 or something. So that's about as much research as I did. And then
USB mic or
well, yeah, it goes it's just USB. Yeah, nothing super fancy. It's just what do you call I don't know what they call that, springy bullshit, and then the foam, and then that big thing, and a condenser mic. So it looks like the kind of mic you'd have at a radio station or a home podcasting setup. So hopefully it'll give me a better mic when I was doing the video editing. So that's what I was getting at earlier, is using Adobe Premiere now, which is awesome software, especially when you got a computer that can handle it. Using the Adobe software, I'm going to quit screen sharing just because there's no need for people to see all that garbage, right? Using the Adobe software to do stuff, I can, like this computer has a hard drive that's, what do you call it, solid state, and then I've got, I don't know, let's say 5 hard drives plugged into it that have stuff, maybe portable drives that I take with me and have stuff from the tours, and then stuff that I've pulled stuff off of those little drives and put them on larger drives, and it's just all over the place. So I've had all these drives connected. I usually, back in the day with my other computer, would have to move all those files onto one drive, ideally a drive that's in the computer or on like the fastest bus possible, and then attach all, use all those files for my video. And then, when it goes to render, it's using that bus. It's connecting all these hard drives through the brain, where if it was all just on one hard drive, it'd be less work for the computer, less effort for the computer, so theoretically faster for the computer. I don't have to do all that. This time I made a video of all the stuff, I don't know if you've seen it, the stuff that I did last year. So I just opened up my folders and started looking at my videos from January and then February and then whatever, and I just opened up the timeline and just went through and created a little thing and said January, and then just started dropping video files in that were representative of the stuff, the adventures. And then once I went through with that January through February, or January through December with videos, I went backwards and went through all the way I sort things is a folder for videos, a folder for photos, a folder for Instagram pictures, folder for downloads, and I put each of those in a monthly folder. So I have like a folder for the year, a folder for the months, and then these subfolders, video, photos and stuff. So I went through January through December, going through all the videos, laid all those files down as, again, representative, things I might want to include in the video, kind of a scratch pad. Then I went backwards from December through January through the photos folder, which included more stuff because I didn't really take video of everything. But the videos gave me sort of, what do you call, like a rough draft, and then I added photos to fill it in. And then it was just endless going back and forth through the video and taking the videos, the small videos. In other words, it was endless going through the, what's the word, the editable file that it was going to be a video, and taking the videos that made up that video and editing each of those down, because that might be a video that's me drive. I think the one video was me driving like from out almost the NRA museum all the way downtown to the Capitol. And I took like turning the corner and seeing the Capitol out of like a huge video. I took like moments out of it, so doing stuff like that, which would have been a tremendous effort for my computer back in the day, was just nothing for this one. So it was pretty cool. So I was able to just leave the files where they are, all over the place on these different hard drives, just start pulling them into the software, then just start going down and editing everything And this took 2 days. Like I kept pausing it and shutting it down and opening it back up, and that's unheard of on my old computer. That would have, I kind of have to do everything all at once on the old computer because you don't get to just go back in and find all those files. It's just too much work for the computer to keep track of it all. So it's really neat. So anyway, then I was able to take and compile it all into 15 minutes or something, 13 minutes worth of video. Like I say, it took 2 days worth of editing and everything. So that's real good confidence building just to know the computer can allow me to do things in stages like that. Like I said, I just didn't have that option in the past. But then I went to render. How long do you think it took to render a video that's made up of, some of these again are huge videos that I'm using a moment of. So all that RAM that has to ignore all that other stuff, but it still has to wield it and bring it up and chop it up and everything during the rendering. 15 minutes, and it's got, I don't know if you saw the video, it's just got a ton of edits and splits and just what I would consider to be, it's obviously not the Lord of the Rings movie or anything, but compared to anything I've ever done, it's like the most elaborate and processor, consuming. How long do you think that took to render when it was all done? 13 minutes worth of video.
30 minutes.
Ooh, 30 minutes. I don't know if anybody else was tracking through all that, but 3 minutes, dude. Shit my pants. Or maybe 4 minutes. It said 4, 11, 4, 2, 4, 4, 4, 3 minutes. Yeah, it was amazing. So I got all done, and then I'm like, oh, the volume's not loud enough. I go back in, I made the volume louder, and I rendered it again. Like, I've never had that ability before. It's amazing. So, I mean, I'm not going to make too many videos like that, but now I'm thinking I have the files. I could go back and do videos like that for 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. 5 would be lame. 6 and 5 would probably be pretty lame. But I can tell you, I took a lot of pictures in 5 and 6. They're just old pictures. But it would be stuff like, all the stuff that came on AK rails back in 2005. When all those companies were first figuring out the assault weapons ban was over, and we actually cared and we were buying stuff. And then like the the SIG 556 just first came out. This was way before the governor. There was some sort of the Smith & Wesson 500s were the big thing back then. The stainless, like Alaska guns. They came out with a couple of different versions of that because it was so popular. Anyway, so that's pretty much as much work as I've given the computer, I think, at this point. I had been exercising it by going through and pulling, like that big file I'm talking about is where I would pull all the dash cam files from like a state or like a whole day of driving. Sometimes that's more than a state. And then turn that into whatever, 2-3 minute file where it's just blowing through, seeing the weather go by basically and seeing it turn from day to night. It's kind of neat. I like that kind of stuff. So it's that kind of stuff I'd been doing, and it was completely capable of doing that. It was crazy. It's just that there's not really much to do there. That's just like grunt work. There's really not, I guess I could pull little pieces out of it, but it's not that creative. It's just doing it. And then it's going to be different having a bunch of like, how many states? If I went to 19 states last year, what's it going to be like having 19 files that are fast forwarding through those states? Like I can't even think of what kind of projects I could do when I can create stuff like that to have pieces, you know what I mean? Like I've never been able to build the kind of elements or pieces before.
Yeah, it's amazing when you have the right tools. Right?
Yeah, or at least a capable tool. I've been trying to do everything with like, a Swiss Army knife and a Leatherman, and it's not like I have, the most fancy set of Mac tools or nothing, but, I actually have screwdrivers and hammers and stuff now that are capable. It's like I got a set of Craftsman stuff, and yeah, it's just really been able to do stuff, and I've been, just not emphasizing, I guess, the tech side of it. But anyway, I don't know how much energy you got, what your deal is. Nobody else is joining us tonight, though. It doesn't seem like. So where are we at with time? It's 10:42. So we spent about 15 minutes reprogramming. It didn't work. We're gonna have to reprogram everyone again because I don't think anybody bought anything from gearwebsites.com tonight. But aside from all the screwing around trying to get XSplit and the tube to well, it wasn't really the two, but all it was just me screwing around trying to figure out which mute buttons to work and which mics to work. And that's just difficult until Clover got in here. I only had the feedback with delay, so it was kind of tough. I was playing a video and pausing it and trying to see if people could give me feedback and figure out which mics to work. But aside from that, the title of the chat was, what did the 2A do last year? How cool would it have been if, like, you want to see? Look, you can imagine. I invited 32 people tonight. So that's, start at the East Coast and go west. I pretty much invited everybody except for like 2 people I know that refused to be in the chat together. Like everybody else, that I invited tonight. Imagine if 30 of them would have joined us tonight. What would we be talking about? What the 2A did this year, the community did for 2A this year. The things I come to mind are the NRA show, and I think it was a big realization for a lot of people who went to NRAM and went to what the hell is leaking on my thing? Who went to NRAM. Oh, weird. That is weird. I took a patch, a PVC patch. I must have put glue on here. That's what it was. Sorry, I got distracted. I took a PVC patch and ripped the Velcro off. I think the Velcro fell off of it. And I stuck it to a piece of magnet and stuck it on the wall on my magnet panel thing here. And I just noticed that a snot is running out of it. And it didn't add up. And I must have used some kind of glue that, like, it didn't melt because it's cold in here. Like, it is super cold in here. So it's definitely not melted, but it looked like a melted ice cube or something. Anyhow, this is distracting the shit out of me, but that glue must have, like...
It's kind of creepy, man. Your patches are bleeding and stuff.
Yeah, seriously. I think the glue just, like, fell apart. I think I was playing with silicone glue. It wasn't silicone, though. It was, like... I think it was, like, a shittier version of Elmer's glue. Anyhow, sorry to get sidetracked there. No, I'm just giving everybody shit. But the... I'm trying to read the chat there. Where the hell was I going? We were talking about what the community did. I guess I was thinking about people that went to NRAM, just thinking of it as another, opportunity to review gear or to get together or to, I don't know what everybody's goals was a long time ago, but I don't think very many people were thinking about sitting down in that room on that Saturday, right? And then when everybody didn't and all that stuff kind of went down, I think that was a realization that, like, there's one thing to be aware, and then there's another thing to realize that you were standing 1,000 feet away from where you could have actually had an effect in real life. Like, literally, if there would have been enough people in that room to say, heck no, we can't just go to hide this. Let's talk about LaPierre. That would have been a different world. So anyway, that's, I think, something that isn't good or bad. I think it's just, we didn't ask the NRA to do this. They didn't ask us react the way we are, and that's a whole different thing. But I certainly think it's an opportunity. It's something that happened this year that's never happened before. But I've been chatting all the Clover. What else what happened with 2A for our community, or what did our community do with 2A? Or I forget how I phrased it.
Well, we had all the bump stock comments and everything that went on.
Holy moly, was that all this year? The comments and
that was this year. Yeah.
The comments and the decision. No. I'm thinking that was 18. So the way that went down, if I remember right, I'm glad we're having this discussion then. From what I remember,
October of last year is when they said they were going to do it.
That's right. And then they did it, and then everybody was in this, like, denial. Oh, FPC. Oh, GOA. Oh, no worries. Like, they're gonna show them, and then you're a felon if you own one today. That's amazing. Yeah, I was thinking that. I didn't even put that in any of my stuff. I only was focusing on what we did, going through my folders, like I said. But so that's why I wanted to have a show like this. Imagine all the other stuff we're missing. Yeah, so that one's super valid. DTP is saying 2 separate comment periods. Yeah.
October of 17 is when it happened, and then they opened up a comment period late 2018, early 2019, and and then they opened up another one, a follow-up after that. And we did really, really well on the first one. We did pretty good. And then we sucked. We dropped the ball big time on the second one. Everybody just, it was kind of summertime, and everybody just got apathetic and didn't do it. And the ones that did sent in form letters, you know.
Whatever, and that sucked. That didn't look good. Yeah.
Right after Clover said that sucked, I changed the setting over here. Let me know if that changed, if you can hear Clover better or not.
Yeah, I'll talk.
So
in a
the same
minute. It
kind of
depends
thing
on
I
how
was
close-
saying. Huh?
If I'm too close to my mic, you bit.
No,
If
no,
I'm
it's
too far away. You bit.
I don't know if you can see my screen where I'm at with being. I don't think you can see it on the gun too, but on the other side, I got it screen shared. At the bottom of XSplit, there's a mic and a speaker, and I had the speaker muted from before, where I didn't know what was going on. But what I'm thinking is that's an emulated speaker, and if I'm muting it, they're only hearing you, like through my speakers into my mic, my emulated mic. Anyway, I don't know if that's even making sense, but yeah, I think it worked. So
They're hearing loop back. That's what they're hearing.
he's echoing now. Dang it. So that means I just got to turn my volume up, I guess. I'll try it this way. No, you're not going to hear it. It's because of the way that I'm attempting to use the gun tube chamber on the same computer that I just, in other words, you have a mic for gun tube chamber. The same mic is using XSplit. And there's some emulated thing happening with the mic, with the speakers and mics. So I got rid of the echoing, but Clover's going to be a little lower, but we'll keep working on it. So I guess what I was getting at is the same thing I was thinking with NRA, and the idea that if you were in that, if you were not in that room, you're 1,000 feet away in the whatever expo building, while the whole thing with LaPierre was going down. We're all in that boat with the bump stocks. I mean, we can all deny it all we want, or we can say it doesn't matter to us, or we could say it's somebody else's fault. But really, it's the same thing when people complain about the NRA. You can say that it's one guy who did the NRA, or you can say that it's 6 people that did the NRA, but really it's one guy and 6 people in the NRA who exploited a vulnerability, and the vulnerability was the apathy and the lack of awareness and the lack of intent and the lack of, well, it's awareness. It's not like we intentionally decided to let the NRA do what it did, but it's everybody's fault. When it's a membership organization, everyone's tasked with paying attention, and we weren't paying attention for too long. Now that we know it's an issue, hopefully it'll never happen again, or it'd be real difficult for it to ever happen again. But is it the same kind of thing with the bump stock? Like, that's, again, the community can say, oh, the NRA shoulda, like, oh, blah, 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 shoulda, or somebody else coulda, and Trump shoulda never. But really, if we were as, whatever, strong politically as we claim to all be, accurate with our firearms, then that would have never been able, that scenario could have never taken place, right? This is all a result of us being wimpy in front of them. At least in their eyes, we're wimpy, and they thought they could do something, or they thought they could infringe, and we wouldn't care. And am I on the right track?
Yeah, no, you're on the right track. But I'll, to be fair, I will throw out a scenario that's happening right now. I think it happened right now, or it just ended, or it's about to end. But anyway, because I forget the dates on it. But the whole COPPA thing with the FTC and YouTube is the same type scenario, that it has to go through comment periods, right? And all the people that are fighting to make the comments and do everything for COPPA, they're facing the same battle with motivating people and getting people to do stuff. It's the same, you know what I mean? It's just,
I think it's even worse there, because we have the Second Amendment, and that's where I think we've got the advantage too. So that's a whole other thing. But we've got the Second Amendment, which is like, I don't know what to call it. I mean, it's like religion or faith. It is like, I don't know what to call it. It's like the idea that we as mammals need to eat, and we enjoy sunshine. Like that's
it's
fundamental.
a guarantee, right?
Well, it's fundamental, and so many people fundamentally understand. And one of the reasons this country's so cool is because we understand we've got these basic, fundamentals, whatever, beliefs, and our system coincides with it. So yeah, but
Well, we had, let's see, what else did we have? I'm
But-
thinking
well,
we
I
had
guess-
1639.
Well, I guess I'm just saying with the internet, at best you get somebody who thinks it's free speech, and that's important. But that's at the best. You're really going to have to tell people, here's a thing, and here's why you should be worried about it, and here's what you can do. And you know what I mean? Like, there's no community behind the internet. The internet is just like telephone. It's like somebody saying they're going to change the price of telephone calls from a dime to 25 cents, and they don't need to. They're just doing it because they can. If we were to sign this thing, they could leave it at 11 cents for 7 years. How many people really are going to, you know what I mean? Like, some people are like, oh, I'm motivated by cost. Like, that's a big deal to me. Other people are like, you wasted more of my time than this is ever worth in my life. Leave me alone. I'm never signing that now. You know what I mean? The Second Amendment gives us a unity that no other cause can offer. So I can't even imagine the frustration if you're trying to do some kind of an internet thing that you feel is important. Yeah, because nobody cares. I mean, people don't care what operating system they use. They don't care what computer brand they've got, hardly, let alone the infrastructure behind it all, or the regulation of the infrastructure behind it all. But anyway, so are you saying COPA is just an analogy, or are you saying COPA has something to do with us as 2A, like it can affect us as 2A? Because I'm guessing you
No,
can
I'm
answer
just
that both
using
ways.
that as a parallel to what happened with the second comment period. I'm convinced that if we had the turnout on the second comment period that we do, because I read that whole, I don't even remember what they call it now, right? But the final thing, the final ruling or whatever they put out.
Mhm.
And I read that thing 3 times, I think, cover to cover. Just through comments like there's nobody's business, man. So X number of comments, said this or that, and X number were this, and I mean, it hit on specific comments that were mentioned a certain number of times, and addressed those specific comments. And I mean, you can't say that the comments doesn't matter. Oh, it doesn't matter. You go over there and you put in a comment, it doesn't matter. It damn sure did, because they mentioned that in the ruling. They went through all of that. It mattered. Somebody read through that. If not multiple people or a board or whatever you call it, committee or something. Some people definitely read through that. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to put together the ruling the way that they did. If somebody actually took the time to read all of it, which 99% of people or more probably didn't, and will never read it. But I'm convinced by reading that and the way it's worded and written, laid out, and everything else, that if you go back and we had the turnout that we did with the first comment period that we did with the second comment period, that it would look a lot different now. It really would.
Well, I mean,
What we did,
you're talking
we did a
after,
couple of things.
you're talking after a negative ruling, of course. Are you saying,
No.
Okay.
I'm talking about there was a comment period, and then there was there was 2 different comment periods. We did really great at getting out the word and getting people to go and file comments and do everything else on the first one. The second one, I didn't drop the ball, but there was a bunch of other people that dropped the ball, for sure.
yeah,
And trying to
okay.
get the word out and trying to motivate people to do it. And then people, I guess maybe they thought they had already commented previously and it didn't matter. Or people, here's the big problem with people in the way that government works, is they don't understand it. So
Well, that's what
this
I was going to say.
it
It's not,
was all a part of sort of the video I put out earlier on 2A Sanctuary, that whether we like politics or not, we've got to start understanding government civic procedure and stuff like that. We've got to understand how it works, because we're never going to win this battle if we don't understand the fundamentals of how things progress through the system, whatever the system is, whether it's the legislative system or the judicial system or whatever. How do you expect to be an advocate or an activist, or you'll fight the power if you don't understand the power?
so a couple of things. One is when you're talking about, dang it. So I'm going to go backwards then because I've lost the first one already. But how do you fight that? By fighting the instant gratification concept. I think that's one of the issues that the gun prohibitionist will use as a tool, is to either through, what's the word, like, there's a attrition, like by waiting, attrition, right, is when people gradually leave because it's taken so long, like a long campaign. they'll play the long game where they win by stagnation, or they're you know they're willing to settle for a draw, and people who are used to the Amazon and everything being immediate. And then I was also going to say, I think problem, probably a problem that we have, and it is totally inadvertent, I suspect, is that on social platforms, a comment is like a hashtag where it's sort of, is it ubiquitous, the word, like everybody knows what it is or whatever. But the problem is a comment in real life, a comment in a government procedure or in a system, or I guess a procedure or whatever it's called, bureaucracy though, that comment holds weight and is totally different. Sure, it's a comment. It's used to describe an action, but not the significance of the action. And I suspect that people who were urged to comment on the ATF thing are blinded by the amount of people that ask them to like, share, and subscribe and comment. And I think it may be blurred together, and people didn't realize the significance and the necessity of a comment to a procedure, like government bureaucracy. Like, this is a necessary thing, and these comments are not, to show so and so we like your brand, but these are to conclude a transaction with our government, with the representatives. They put the system in place because of the vernacular. I think it got blown away, and because of the way people, and this again, I think it's inadvertent, but the way that we run our channels, because of the way social platforms are built, we ask people to interact with the platform, and you do that by saying like, share, subscribe, comment. Comments are valuable, and I think it gets blended in, right? Melted with this procedural comment that the government needed in this particular case. And I think when you get, like you say, 2 rounds of it, if people don't know the concept ahead of time, if they don't know that they need to register to vote and then vote, they might be satisfied by registering that they voted. They might not understand the whole process, and they participated to the extent they're aware of, and they think that they've completed the whole thing. So if people participated the first time and were either frustrated because they didn't get a result, or they misunderstood and didn't realize that they're going to need to do it again or more often, that it was beneficial to encourage others to educate, you know what I mean? The ball got dropped, and it might be unintentional. I'm not going to blame anybody except for, if we did this 600 times, it's our fault, but at this point, this was a unique situation, and we just got to be fluid and ready to adapt to these things when they come at us.
It's frustrating, and I get it. I mean, DTV out there is asking some questions about it. It is frustrating because, he was like, well, we already had one comment period, and then we had to do another one. So they were just going to, were they just going to keep doing comment periods until they got what they wanted? And it's like, no, if you ever watch, just sit and watch C-SPAN for an hour one day, when they're actually doing something on C-SPAN, right? Just sit there for a minute and look at the votes that they take. They literally call a vote to be able to vote on voting for a certain amendment. It's weird. I mean, that makes hardly any sense. It's complicated and it's convoluted to say, well, what are you voting on? We're voting on the vote for the vote of the amendment. And you're like, what the crap are you talking? It's right. It's confusing and it's frustrating, and I get it. But we have to be able to understand that, and we have to be able to do, I think, a better job. I know a lot of people don't like to talk politics, and we fall into this trap. I agree. Partisan politics is bad. But, when we go out and we say, well, those damn Democrats or those damn Republicans or this, that, or the other, I get it, or the libtards or the whatever. That's damaging. I don't believe that's productive in any way, shape, form, or fashion. However, understanding politics and playing partisan politics are 2 totally separate things. I think people should. I get it. It's not a beautiful game. There's not bright shiny lights. It's not particularly entertaining or anything like that. And for me, it's interesting, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just glutton for punishment. I like misery, or I'm just out of the box and weird, right?
Well, hold on. Got a couple of things. I'm going to interrupt you in a couple of things. I know that you can handle it, so I'm obviously not persecuting you, but I'm going to take the opportunity to say it loud and fucking clear. Don't fucking say tards on my fucking channel ever. And don't ever say it in front of me in real life. And I know I'm not saying this to Clover, I'm saying this to every motherfucker who says that shit casually in front of me. And that's why I'm passionate about it. You're you're fucking making fun of some of the people who care most about the human race, that are have wished no ill will on anyone. And when we casually use that word, fuck you. And again, I'm not saying it to Clover. I'm saying it to everybody else in the world who casually uses that word. It bothers me a fucking lot. And don't say it on my channel, please. I think that they're using the politics that you just said, the Republican, Democrat. Their job is to distract and to divide. And by creating politics synonymous with politician and with and party, they've destroyed the politic. I don't know if I'm using the right vernaculars, but the politics, I think what you're saying, is the procedure that we have in place to civilly interact with a whole bunch of people with drastically different points of view peacefully, because we all really want to get along, right? So when they distract with the Republican said this or Democrat said that or blah 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 and fuel that war, they are distracting. They're getting people dissuaded from involving themselves in any type of politics, which is critically important because that's the system that survived 2 world wars. The entire effing world wanted to see us destroyed and was at least willing to let us fail. We survived that because we have a system. We've survived a civil war, multiple social situations, and it's because we got a system underground. Unfortunately, we have a way better way to communicate than we've ever had before, and as human beings, it takes us a minute to catch up, but we'll master this. We mastered Hollywood, we mastered the press, we mastered radio, we mastered television. So we built the internet. We will master it. We just have to realize that foreign actors are going to use the same awesome tools that we have to do good to fiddle with us. And it's super easy to break glass. It's super easy to sit across the street with a BB gun and break glass. Every time you put a new panel of glass in, you can get frustrated. You can not put up windows anymore, or we can think outside the box and work together. And that's all I'm getting at. I just wanted to interrupt you there, but appreciate it.
Yeah. Come up with a bulletproof panel, right?
Yeah, or something different. Maybe just shape it differently, right? So that it's pointless for them. They can keep their BB gun and go do something else. Or maybe we figure out a way to figure out why they're doing it. Maybe they were shooting at a bird that's eating their worm, and we're just the backdrop, and they didn't realize or something. You know what I mean? Like, it's all about communication, right?
True, too. Right. Yeah. And there's a lot of stuff out there that gets caught in the crossfire, you know. But no, I agree with you. And I mean, the only reason I said that, I mean, it was within a certain context. I certainly wasn't calling anybody that. So
I know. I'm only saying it because other people would get freaked out if I went off, but it's my show and it's the last day of the year.
I don't like that. Yeah. Well, I don't like that. I don't like that used in any form, right? I mean, when you're talking about mental deficiency, which is where the root of all of that came from.
Yeah. I mean, you want to call a fat guy fat, fat lady fat? She's fat. Like, something, there's every once in a while something causes it, but yeah, you can get fat. You can be dumb looking, get smart looking. You can change your haircut, but stuff that you can't change, that just drives me nuts when people, because it's so casual and people are so willing to, and people that'll step over tenderly around other, blah, 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 blah. Oh my goodness, these people don't stand up and say F you ever. I just like to do it for them.
Yeah, no, I got you.
But anyway, so we had the stock thing, we had the NRA. What else do we have this year?
The 1639 thing.
Okay, yeah.
That, which we kind of got off on a tangent before we got to that. But not only 1639, but all the instant backlash from 1639, the efforts to raise money to fight it, the efforts that are going on now, as a matter of fact, to fight it, between Yankee and Sporting Systems and a whole host of other people and companies involved in that, not just in Washington State, but elsewhere. You've seen a super awesome, people talk about Virginia and the 2A sanctuary. That's certainly going to be a part of something I think that goes down with 2019. But I think Virginia has, in a way, kind of overshadowed Washington, and Washington was a catalyst, I think. It was something that it preceded Virginia. It was a very similar effort in a way. And I don't know why Virginia, I guess Washington, and I'd like your thoughts on that, of course, G, but I see Washington, I think people, again, we get into this partisan mindset. And I think people see Washington as, oh, well, that's blue, all the Democrats are there, we expect it to be a crap hole for the 2A and everything else, right? So they kind of expected, and then when bad things for the 2A happen, it's like, oh well, we've lost Washington, just like we've lost California, or we've lost New York, or we've lost New Jersey. And when we seem to flip in someplace like Virginia, which is what, semi-quasi southern, whatever, maybe, type state, then everybody loses their minds, and it's like, why did we not lose our minds more over what was going on in Washington if we had this type of outrage going on? And I'm not talking about just within the state, I'm talking about in the creator sphere, I'm talking about on the internet, I'm talking about with Second Amendment organizations, I'm talking about with, that plus the people, of course, on the ground. And it just seems like, to me, one is really no higher elevated than the other. They were both awesome things that happened in 2019 and very positive and productive things coming out of horrible things going on, of course. But I don't know. I just don't think. I hope that the Virginia thing doesn't hurt the efforts any more than maybe it already has in Washington.
Okay, I was with you up until the end. I've been reading and listening, but what do you mean can you just that last part again? What do you mean you hope that it doesn't? How could the?
Well, everybody focusing on Virginia, right? It's, oh well, Virginia this, and they're gonna pass off, they're gonna do this, and they're gonna do that, and all these states are passing 2A sanctuary, which every day a new one does it. And it's back in the news, and it's on all social media, and it's across everything. And a Democrat over there says something dumb like calling the National Guard. It's all over the news. Meanwhile, all this money's been raised, all of this activism is happening in Washington to try to roll back the horrible legislation known as 1639, and it's kind of on a back burner.
Okay,
as
I was
far as
thinking
getting national support because everybody's eyes is on Virginia when their session hadn't even started to even attempt to pass bills.
Gotcha. I was thinking other Washington, so I was like missing. That's where the gap was. Okay, so.
Oh, you were thinking D.C.?
Yeah, I was just thinking D.C. in general. So you're talking specifically the 1639. So okay, first I was going to ask, when did the Illinois thing happen? The Illinois sanctuaries happen. Was that this year or was that 2018?
I think that was 18. I don't know if Ozzy's out there, but he would know.
I know that Ozzy and Tony were, leading it, but I think it was after. I know it was after Jimmy was doing Early Watch. It might have been when Dead Horse was helping with Early Watch for a while there, and everyone who's interested could probably run Early Watch. I don't think anybody would care. But I can't remember if that was this year because it's been a long year, or if it was 18.
I think that was. I'm looking, and I think that might have been the early this year.
So there you go. So I think a part of Virginia is.
Yeah, I'm looking at a resolution now. Yeah, and it's April of 2019. So.
Okay, so then what you've got is the same thing. I think we were talking a little bit before, where you get people who are like, "Uh-oh, well, look what we messed up."
Ozzy said it started in 18. By the way.
Okay.
So obnoxious, same thing.
But then you've either got people that are like, "Uh-oh, we missed the ball on that one," right? Like either promoting it or getting behind it or whatever. And then you got people that were like, "Hey, that was super successful. Let's do it again." So, but like both ways, you've got that influence going into Virginia. So that's, I guess, one element I want to throw out there, that let's not forget Illinois. They started this whole thing. Then that if it did happen in this year, it's at least it's an element of this year's situation. A lot of these people have links. And then I'd have to think more about, like, if it's going to interact with 1639. I don't know. You could say, yeah, I guess, because if the gun community is, I don't know what to call it, like one stream of water, and we can only do one thing at a time, then yes, right? It would have to, because it's the thing right now and it's vital. It's like closer to the other Washington that people care about more. But in real life, we're a pretty big river. We should be able to divert at will and when needed and provide hydroelectric power to both entities, not even equally, because we always want to strategically hold something back, right? That's a tough thing in the future. Once we actually start attacking, we can start talking about how to attack. But yeah, I mean, I'd like to say it shouldn't, that if anything, it should enhance it, that people see Virginia and see, continuation of the same kind of attacks, and to understand that, it's time to act, and see it as like a compounding of attacks. So when the Nazis started teaming up with other fascists, did we go, oh, well, now it's going to be a hard war to fight? Or did we just say, all right, see ya, I'm going to go fight war, quit using aluminum, turn that shit into bullets for me, and keep sending them over until somebody, until this is over?
Right.
I don't know. I was watching what was I watching a minute ago? Oh, one of my favorite movies of all times. That movie where the guy keeps getting killed, and then the aliens, like the one alien throws up on him, and then he can't get killed anymore. He keeps repeating the same day over and over. Yeah.
Day after tomorrow or something.
Well, there's a couple of names for it, but at one point he gets sick of fighting because he fights the same battle with these aliens every single day forever, and he gets sick of it, and he goes to some bar. And I never really paid attention to that scene before, but if you remember, he gets sick of fighting the battle, so he tries to leave, or he just decides to leave that day, basically. And he goes to drink a beer or whatever, and there's like a guy sitting there, and I never paid attention to what that guy says, and he's basically saying, kids these days are so wimpy, or blah, blah, blah. Back in my day, my dad solved World War II. And I just never thought of it like how they talk about how hard times create hard men, and hard men create soft times, and soft times create soft men, and soft men create soft times, or create hard times, or whatever that cyclical thing is. And I was just thinking, like, I never heard that person sitting there, and that is probably put there intentionally to illustrate the people who've never done nothing, who've had people come before that did great things, and then expect that of their descendants or somebody else. Like, that takes a certain amount of, let's just put it nicely, obliviousness and ultimate faith in others, that they're going to do everything that needs to be done so that you can just sit there. Is there a strategy? I know I'm just kind of going spinning here, but is there a strategy if you shine the light at somebody and say, hey, you're the one who needs to stand up? Just because your parents did a lot of good stuff doesn't mean you can task your kids with it. When do you stand up? And I know that's not everybody, but certain people kind of applies to. All right, so, and then the last thing. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, that's why I push. I mean, I think everybody out there within earshot of this, especially, can be an advocate every single day. You can be an advocate. Nobody's asking you to be an activist and to vote, 100%, 80%, or even 60%, probably, or 50% of your time in being an activist. But you can certainly at least be an activist, very least, on a daily basis. But anyway, what you got next?
Sorry, were you asking me something? I was washing my hands. I got this crap all over my hands. So.
No, you were going to talk about something else, or I don't know.
Oh, I don't know. I think you brought up a lot of interesting stuff so far. So the idea was we were chatting because nobody else is showing up, even though multiple people who are out there have links and have been invited in.
The two smartest people on the internet are already here, so we're good.
We're just going to fix this real quick. So we've been chatting, though. The goal of the chat was, I've been in a bunch of chats. I watched a bunch of chats where people are reviewing, their own projects, which is, I think, important. And you should start doing that if you're not. Just for your own satisfaction, but for years from now, when you continue to do this years from now, it'd be nice to be able to look back at what you did or describe something or remember for, when something happened. Anyway, so I've been watching people talk about personal and project related focus or point of view. So I was going to do a chat here on the second to last day of the year for our last chat to talk about what the community has experienced for 2019 and what our possibilities are. With that in mind, I invited 32 people, pretty much everybody that attended the AmCon and Gun Rights Policy Conference, and everybody who's ever seen on our chats, and Clover showed up. So we're chatting about what the 1639, most recently, the stuff that happened in, well, not most recently in time, but that's our most recent conversation was the 1639.
Right.
And there's so much to that because first off, it's a ballot initiative that was, kind of, what's the word, like unscrupulously passed.
Shadily done.
Yeah. And then that enforces the strategy, which they were successfully able to reproduce in multiple states. So it's not like it's a unique outlier. It's a common thing that they've been doing based on its success. So anyway, it was a shitty way to have a law, and it illustrates or shines light on the lack of coordination and the lack of efficiency of our shit. I gotta turn my heat on. It is fucking cold. I gotta go put my serape on here in a second. But it illustrates that everything that how it became, how it enacted, was all a thing that's worth focusing on. But then the results of it, and I guess you could say, I don't want to call it apathy. If something happens 100 times and you do it poorly, okay, scorn somebody. If something's never happened before and you don't perform well in reaction to it, I think it's douchery to bitch at those people. They tried and they failed. Okay, so, did we help them or did they do it by themselves? Were they good at it? Are they doing it when they just woke up? Like, I don't want to scorn Washington or nothing or the community, but yeah, we all sat there watching it happen and then we did nothing. I am personally pissed that I went to the Gun Rights Policy Conference in Chicago at great expense and effort, and that was the only piece of gun prohibition legislation that even happened in 2018, and we had to sit there and not focus on it and then watch it happen, even though the entire Second Amendment media and activist community got together months before, and then we watched it happen because we weren't coordinated, and then we sat there watching it exist because we weren't coordinated, and then we sat there watching it get fought by individuals and gun shops and a couple of organizations that either were not good at or suck completely at social, so that everyone was not even aware of it until Yankee got up there and started being a douchebag, got a bad reputation or worse reputation, and then all of a sudden how much $1,000 were raised?
Oh, well over 100,000, 120, 25,000, I think, maybe.
I gotta go get a blanket. I got this blanket with a hole in it, kind of like a cape, like the guy from one movie. I gotta go grab mine and put it on. It's cold as shit here. I'll be right back.
Good. Yeah, what he did, that's the second component. There's three major components to, 1639. One is the way in which it was passed, and, it was fought as valiantly as it could have been at the time. The second is where, Yankee and, let's give Sporting Systems credit, because I know that they did a whole lot of work. Got to talk with them at Gun Rights Policy Conference, and they put in a lot of time and effort and their own money, let's face it. And then, then you got the repeal, efforts and all going on now, which is, of course, where we're seeing, some of that money that was raised and whatnot. So, that's going to spill over definitely into 2020. One thing that was mentioned out there, and I don't necessarily agree, was user had said that something about Virginia was more important, that's where the fight's at. But is it really? Because if we can set a precedent where we're able to get these things repealed or defeated in court or whatever, if we can focus our efforts on shutting down things that have already been passed, then will that not maybe give politicians pause of trying to pass things in the future if they know that, number one, that can potentially ruin their chances of re-election? It's a gamble. And then number two, it's also a gamble that it's even going to withstand scrutiny or withstand the demands of the people when it comes down to it. So, are they gonna gamble their political career on something that's ultimately gonna be beaten one way or another? And I think the answer to that is yes, it would give them pause. So that has repercussions far and wide beyond the Virginia thing. What's happening in Virginia, we've seen that happen in other states before, where they went a majority one way or another, and then started proposing bills or trying to do this or trying to do that. So I don't think it's anything new and groundbreaking. However, defeating some of this stuff is new and groundbreaking. I see it as two totally separate issues to me. And in the context of what they are, I believe that the repeal of 1639 could hold far more significance than what is taking shape now, let's say, in Virginia, because it's great. I mean, every county in the United States should go to a sanctuary or constitutional sanctuary or whatever. They should. That's great. But, beyond that, all we've got is politicians that have filed bills. That's all they've done at this point. And given lip service to this, that, or the other. So unlike Washington, there's no action that has been taken, and there's really no actionable response when there's no actual action that's being taken. So, yeah, I just see it as two totally separate issues. In my mind,
Well,
1639 is a little more important.
I don't know about that. I was getting this blanket and putting it on and peeing, and roll call snuck in. Thanks for joining. But I don't know about that last part about saying it's more important, because number one, Virginia is freaking Virginia. Washington, space, just Washington. And it's Washington, for crying out loud. We have some ports there, and it's like a doorway to Canada, but they've always been a bunch of jerks. Virginia is Virginia. We've had it for a long time, and it's right next to Washington, D.C. So I see a couple of things. I don't agree with they haven't done it yet. They just threatened to. So what, are you supposed to sit there where they're like, I'm going to pee on your lawn. I'm going to pee on your fridge or whatever. I'm going to pee in your fridge. They walk in your front door. I'm going to pee in your fridge. They walk into the kitchen. I'm going to pee in your fridge. There's no cops anywhere because it's the kitchen. And then they just walk over to your refrigerator and start peeing in your fridge. Like, are you then supposed to go, oh, well, now I think you're going to pee in my fridge because up until now you just threatened. You know what I mean? I think you got to bark them down. They're just politicians and they're just making noise. So maybe if we can get rid of it by, making noise right back at them and mobilizing a base, then I think it's a valid effort. So I know, I'm just throwing that out there. But man, I don't know. Roll call. You solved this. I'm cold and Clover just said a bunch of stuff. You're tagged. Solve it.
Yeah, it's snowing here. My dog's like, I gotta let my dog out. He's freaking out. It's snowing. He doesn't like snow. So what was the question?
I guess Clover kind of pondered there if 1639 was a bigger issue, I guess for 2A or for consequentially going forward or something. Yeah, because I don't know. The thing about Virginia, and I'm going to answer this instead of giving the roll call actually an opportunity to say anything. One of the things from before with what's going on in Virginia is what happened in California. It's what's happened in New York. It's what's happened in Illinois, and it's what's happened in Washington State. And I think it's going to happen to every single state because the situation is you got a lot of land mass and a city or two. So in Virginia, it's not even a city inside of their city, right? It's DC, next door to their city. And they got a whole bunch of people that live in the cheap Virginia because they're too cheap or scared to live in what DC has become because of the policies of DC, right? And the failed policies, you could say. So they've flowed to the other state nearby, and now political changes happened. So that's what happened in California. That's what's happened in Illinois, in New York for a long time. It happened in Nevada, or it attempted to. It's going to happen in Arizona. Later, it'll happen in other states. It could happen to Texas. We have places where all those sanctuary counties, if we pat ourselves on the back because it's 97%, it's like 90% of the population is in those two other counties. And that's how they got this through. So I think that instead of just acknowledging the efforts that are going on, we need to start thinking about the system and what's causing the thing and how they're able to, why they're using this strategy as opposed to the next. Think a little bit of chess and not just react, but why are they doing this maybe, and I don't know, but I just wanted to throw that out there, that there's more layers to it.
There's a positive. I've seemingly dumped on Virginia, and that's my if I'm construed that way, that's not my intent. So let me say something positive about the Virginia thing. Is one thing that I'm really liking about the Virginia. Obviously, I mean, I like it anytime that we're putting up a 2A fight. It's wonderful. But one of the things, I guess, hopeful maybe is a better word, is I've seen the Virginia thing inspire some of this type of thought and activity from some more of these hardened states, like you mentioned. I've seen some stuff coming out of Massachusetts, some stuff coming out of New Jersey, talking about 2A sanctuary and stuff. So that's people starting to do things in places that have never done that before. Now that is new. That is groundbreaking. That is something that we've never seen before. So that is a positive.
Okay, so does that explain it to you, Rocco? Go ahead.
I think, when I started this journey, I seen a lot of complacency in the gun world, and I think this year I guess we could use the term, people are woke now. People are understanding that there's being things enacted, anti-gun legislation that is, detrimental. And I've seen Virginia wake up, now Clover just mentioned New Jersey. I mean, the Jewish population in New York just open carry. People are starting to get it. Now, the big thing is how to get them to buy in, which I don't really like that word, but buy into this and continue it. I mean, it's one thing to see all these sanctuary cities. I mean, right next door in Illinois. I mean, this is where this all started. And to keep them doing this, to keep them, I guess, woke is the real, trick, to keep them, on their toes. And I think the more and more politicians dig their holes by sitting on a national stage telling you they're going to take your arms, should even embolden us to go further in our quest. And I hope people are starting to realize that this is a major problem. Anti-gun legislation is a major problem. Washington, Virginia, New York, New Jersey, these places, you're starting to see people start to understand that regardless of what us little people say on YouTube, that this is a growing problem, and it takes everyone to solve this growing problem. But keeping them in the fight, it reminds me of, Sandy Hook, when everybody got up and, they're up in arms about Obama. But then you saw them disappear. You saw them relax. It's time to stop relaxing. It's time to keep on pushing and not stop ever. We all say it on all of our chats. This is a fight that never goes away. It's just not, you're not going to wake up one day and be like, oh, everything's fixed. It's something that we have to continuously do. Something like G does, continuously makes you aware. The stuff that you do with your podcast, Ghost, everybody. But we have to continue this. We have to continue to see sanctuary cities pop up. We got to continue to see rallies. I don't care what anybody says about the Washington, D.C. rally. I wish I could be a part of it. That's amazing. But now we need to get, bigger. Now this issue needs to become an everyday fight, not just once in a while. And I think that's one of the big problems that we fall into. We do these things. We have this huge controversy in Virginia. But we don't ever want to let this go. Even if they do win that fight in these states. Now it's time to move on to the next one. And make sure when we win these fights that we hold on to it. And and we don't melt back into society and let this stuff creep back in, because it always does. We see it time and time again.
All right, so let's go back to 19. We're still in it, I guess. Some of you, no, nobody's out of it yet. Wait a minute, is Vandalista? Wait, is that tomorrow there? No, but it would still be tomorrow morning. Anyhow, we got 1639. We had the bump stock thing. We had the Virginia situation and the Illinois situation, like the residual of the Illinois consequences. We've only talked about negatives. Are there more negatives that we're missing? I'm sure there's more negatives. Did we lose any constitutional carry anywhere? Did we lose constitutional carry in Congress, or in by them not taking cases to the Supreme Court? Specifically, constitutional carry was Peruta this year. See, this is tough going back and remembering just 12 months and not 18 or not 9, right? But Peruta, the one out of California, on whether or not the state could or should or had to, and then Hawaii, or was that the same one? But I know that the Ninth Court over there, the idiots on the West Coast, it's 435. He's closer to tomorrow than I thought, or to next year, next decade. You realize he's going to be in a whole nother decade from us. Yet they're somehow not robots. They can be in the future. They can be an entire decade ahead of us, but they're not robots. Sure.
Peruta was a while ago.
Okay. Well, I know that it's been bouncing around, but I know at some point they didn't take something to the Supreme Court and that killed everything. We had to start from scratch. And I know that might have been New York also. Anyway, I know a couple of things happened that we're forgetting because does anybody write down at the end of the month what happened this month pro 2A, what happened anti 2A? Imagine if someone did that once a month, wrote down what happened in the last 30 days, as part of their last show of the month or something. And then at the end of the year like this, they could write down what happened in all those shows, because it'd be really easy. And then at the end of each year, they'd have this show. Then they could go at the end of a decade and go, I wonder what happened the entire last decade. The reason I'm bringing this up is it was at, I can't remember. I think it was a live conversation with the Polite Society podcast of all things, who only broadcast to Facebook, and they do it sporadically, and I can never catch them. But I happened to see one once, a long time ago, I think. And it was, I can't remember now, some author who I am aware of, but I'm not the biggest fan of, or a podcaster who I barely am aware of, and I can't remember. It's somebody, I know what they look like, I think. Anyway, somebody wrote something, and it was looking back at, would it have been last year, 2018? Looking back at 2017, but they looked back and looked at only the positives. And I thought that was very, not just optimistic, but what's the word for, like, not reassuring, but like emboldening or something. Like it's good to not forget the good stuff, right? And I thought that was highly useful to go back, because it was a year when we were getting wailed on. It might have been 2-3 years ago now that I'm thinking about it. We were getting wailed on by something. And I was in one of these chats. I've been in like 12 of these year-end chats like this before, at least. I mean, I've been through 12 years of these chats. Let's say there's probably 2 or 3 each year. I've been through like a lot of these chats, so it blends together. But, everybody was bitching and moaning or whatever, complaining, because we always like to look at the black eyes that we got. But nobody was looking at the positive stuff. And there was quite a few positive things, all kinds of little CCW things here and there. It had to be a couple of years ago, because we were still moving on the CCW front. Now that we have CCW in every single one of the 50 states, we can't get motivation from seeing new states become CCW. We have to look for motivation other ways. Maybe the states move into shall issue or something. But it was very, yeah, exactly. Or suppressors with hunting or something. We got to look for our motivation somewhere else. And that's, I guess, what I'm looking for, is how that we can remember to remind ourselves that there's definitely motivation out there, right? So anyway, looking back at the year, I don't want to discard, and I don't want to forget, and I don't want to not give the significance to anything that was negative, but I also don't want to forget the positive. So obviously, DTP just put No Other Choice, Katie's training, Maj in Philly. Yep, we got Faster Saves Lives. We got Walk the Talk America. They might not have been born this year, but they certainly, this was their first full year of stretching out. You've got the one day I'll remember the DC project without having to think about it. Fourth year, third year. It was this the anniversary of Heller, or was that last year? That might have been last year was the anniversary of Heller, 10th anniversary. So we had the 11th anniversary of Heller. Of course, we had the first 2A rally here in DC. We had the first rally in Arizona from these bunch of bikers, like veteran biker type of bikers, you know, like Vietnam vet type of bikers who got together with Cheryl Todd and AZ Firearms, and this is going to be their second year of putting on a rally, 300 strong last year. So that's just one I'm familiar with, but I'm sure other states had rallies pre-2A rally. Of course, Gun Rights Policy Conference, NRA show, even looking at the missed opportunities, NRA show had plenty of opportunities. Lots of people got together, more turnout from gun channels than ever before. Was that the first time you guys got a house? A shared house?
For NRA, yes.
I think ever. You guys never have had a shared house in Vegas before that, or Tulsa even. I think that was the beginning of you guys figuring out that that's an option, and that certainly worked well. I just was grabbing the footage of, huh?
Yeah, that may have been you were maybe right. That may have been the first one.
And then, because I know everybody was showing up, but everybody was trying to deal with like multiple hotels and all that hassle. So, anyway, so I'm trying to think of other stuff that happened. The NRA show, there was other events throughout the year. There's too many, people are always like, there's not enough females in firearms. Let's go talk about how many females there are in firearms. I think it's Girl with a Gun, it was her second year, or maybe her first year, doing an event very similar to KD, but it was off my radar until after it had already happened. So this year I'm going to effort to make more of a point about that one. That was down by Florida somewhere more. You had the Armament is still out there. They had their Creator Summit, two of them really. The big one and then the smaller one earlier in the year. I don't know if they're out there. They still need to give me the dates on this year's. It sounds like he was just talking about getting some more resources for this year's. There were other things. Now we're in POMA. I guess we can try to make use of their calendar. I don't know. You've had a lot more success with POMA than I have. Although I have just been sitting there expecting them to bring, resources and wealth to me, but that hasn't happened.
No, you have to. I'll tell you the key. One of the keys to POMA is paying attention to not the money line newsletter that they send out. That's just like jobs. I mean, if you're interested in earning revenue, maybe writing or doing something or working on a website, there could be something in those for you. So yeah, you definitely want to read those. But their actual whatever news bulletin that comes out once a week or whatever, actually going through that, press releases and things like that, there's a lot of opportunities, let's say, that present themselves in that if you actually read through.
Oh no, I read it all the time, but it's super industry is I guess what I'm saying. Like they're super focused on industry and they're not worried about I like to say the environment that the industry sets down in. So they're not a two-way.
It's not a two-way thing.
Yeah, and it's not a like I'm into this extreme thing or like this outlayer. It's definitely cool if you like, if you're just trying to sell shoes and you're got your blue shoes and there's people out there with yellow shoes, and I know it's good for that. I'm not going to complain about it because I have not been to SHOT Show with POMA. I don't know what they got going on, and was about to say, I was just looking at their website and trying to find out if there was an event calendar. I wasn't really ragging on POMA as much as saying they don't offer I don't know, something like Gunstreamer, for example. You log into it as a user and then you can leave comments for people. So somebody might have a channel on Gunstreamer and post videos or something, and then you comment on their video, and then they comment to that, and there's a conversation that gets started. You might be able to send a direct message. I don't know who really cares, but you can go to these platforms and use them. Puma's not that kind of platform. It's more of a newsletter on steroids, or it's more of a like news list on steroids. So I'm just trying to get my lay of the land, I guess, is what I'm really getting at. Figuring out what tools are available in that, because what I haven't found, I guess, is a calendar. And I'm guessing that whenever we do find it, or however it gets its point across, I believe Poma will be a big resource for what I was getting at is like, whatever it is, Grow with a Gun, I think, has her 2A workshop. It's not a 2A workshop. It's more of a gun trainer workshop in that respect. It's closer to what KD was doing. But regardless, it's a way for females in the industry to go be comfortable with other females and learn, in a conducive environment, how to train more females. That's something that should be, promoted. And anyway, so we got the things like that. I guess looking back at 19, what else are we missing as far as the 2A for everyone type of projects or events? I mean, Tony has too many of them to really count. I don't think he does like one yearly. We missed the Pennsylvania event. The USCCA does a get together.
That's carry guard that happens. What am I thinking?
Clint is saying we had Trump. Clint is saying we
You
had
had
Trump
the outdoor show in Virginia.
in Virginia, or the one in Pennsylvania, or the one in Virginia.
Oh, Pennsylvania, that's what I meant.
Okay, next year they'll have one in Virginia with Trump is doing his gun-a-thon coming up in Virginia.
Gun-a-thon's in April. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, sorry, I was Clint was saying that we had Trump, the House, and the Senate, yet nothing, and that's something true. That
Yep.
without focusing too hard on the politics side of the political end of it, yeah, we definitely, again, I'm going to be the first one to scold us as the members of the NRA for the way that the NRA's behaved over the years. It's our government too, and they're our representatives, but it's our government. The government is us. If we ignore it, name anything we ignore that gets better. What performs best and, is sharpest and cleanest and strongest when you ignore it? I mean, nothing. Everything dissolves and degrades.
It's that apathetic attitude, I think, that, could have been worse. It could have been worse. And so that's good enough. It could have been worse. It's good enough for everybody. Instead of, we've got a shot at rolling stuff back. We've got a shot at suppressors. We've got a shot at national reciprocity. Let's push this stuff. Instead of sitting here and going, could have been worse. We won. Could have been worse. Let's push these people now.
I guess I'm not sure who you're responding to.
And we didn't do that.
I hear you, but I don't know who
But
you're.
to be fair, there was some tragedy that happened, and people played up the tragedy, and there was people afraid to push through the tragedy.
Well, again, I don't know what specifically you're talking about, but I was thinking of, I guess, the ineffectiveness of just the potential we had with a fairly conservative political, playing field whenever Trump first got elected, or whenever I don't remember how it all went down, but whenever we first got the good, judge or something. So whenever those things happened, I remember I was sitting at the museum in Cody, Wyoming. So it must have been whenever I was getting back from the tour in 18 that we got that Kavanaugh guy who should have been pro-gun, and like right then we could have ideally been putting pressure on politics to see gun stuff happen. And I guess right then is where, potentially we didn't do stuff, or like the government who was able was not urged by us to act. But here's the thing. I don't want to just sit back and go, here's a bunch of things that because this is what Honda does all the time. I don't want to be Honda. I don't want to sit back in hindsight and go, here's what we could have done and we didn't. So you're all wrong. right? Like that's lame and it doesn't help nothing. So I like to just throw out there that, you know, this is all new for everybody, but that's why we look back, right? So that we can figure out like, oh, there was a real obvious path there and we didn't take it. Do we have an obvious path in front of us, or is there something similar going forward? We all work independently, and that's fine. I don't want to be a collective for dang sure. I don't like the results of a collective, but an organized group of individuals is stronger and resilient, can defend and can strategize. The reason we're individuals is because when we work together, we're awesome, and we need to work together. And that's all it is. We just have to, now that we've become aware of things, it's our job to remind ourselves, right? So that as a collective, as a conversation, it can stay focused and get, like you say, through the hard stuff that they're going to push at us through whatever history. They know that they can push some stuff at the country that the country's going to, out of morals and respect, react to in a expected way, and they use that to their advantage. We have to figure out a subtle yet effective way to end that. It's been done before, and it just has to be after this way. I'm not going to bitch and complain that we didn't do everything right, as much as let's shine a light and remind everyone to could have walked this really cool path. And then we should also probably, man, it'd be nice to have the 32 people in here to get some insight. I also don't like to look at the thing like, we could have walked that path last time and we didn't, and that would have been the perfect, most direct path to our goal. So next time when we're offered options, let's choose that path, because that, it might not apply, right? That might be the sucker bet. That might be the strategy being used against you. Offer you this path every time until you finally take it out of whatever, and then they get you, because that was the worst path, really. And I don't want to fall into that either. But anyway, I don't know. We're just all talking theoretically, I guess, at this point. Anything else last year? Roll call. Are you ever going to shut up? Come on. Quit giving us ideas about last year.
Ideas about what we should do for next year?
Okay, let's go that way already. Yeah, we've been chatting for a bit. That's the other half of the chat. So look, turning it around the other way, let's preemptively scold each other for what we didn't do next year yet. Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I didn't do right. I mean, heck, I think I'm starting to learn the do's and don'ts of this thing that we do, and I think I can do it better next year. I think planning my time and planning our time to do these great things. I enjoy going to Tulsa. I enjoy going to the NRA show. Planning these things just takes time, and I've learned my lesson. Taking an indiscriminate trip to Nebraska really put me in a hole. So I'm not going to do that next year. I'm gonna hopefully one day make it to SHOT Show. And I think that's one of my goals that I'm going to make for next year, is to continue to strive and do the things that's necessary to get to the plateaus that I've seen other people get to. I think there's tons of stuff that I could do better on my channel, whether it be content produced or live, or learning the internet.
Hold on,
I think
let's
one
get
of my
bigger
biggest
though.
downfalls in the world is watching you guys use the internet so effectively.
Hold on. That's just
I
like
totally suck at computers.
Nah, that's just like riding a bike. You watch somebody who can BMX good. It's just because they did nothing but BMX every single day after school. But let's not talk about each other and what we're going to do. Let's talk about what the Second Amendment community could do. If all of a sudden you had the stick and they all got to march to your direction, what's the big picture? If it's all like a game of Risk, how do we play the 2020 game?
I think we've got a really good shot. I don't think on the federal level, I don't think we have much option, honestly. And with some of the stuff going into court, we don't have a lot of influence with that stuff. I mean, it has to kind of rise or fall on its merits, right? But I think what we do have is some more control at the local and the state levels. And I do think that there are several states in play for things like constitutional carry, things like a switch over from shall issue to may issue, and so forth and so on. I think we've got some pretty good leadway. Things like you talked about with suppressor use with NFA items, with some things like that. Little victories, but victories nonetheless on the state level that can be won in 2020.
Roll call. You ready to say something?
Go out and vote. I mean, how about we become active not only in the federal, but in your state level. Get out there and do stuff. Get out there and be a part of your community. I mean, isn't that the huge role that we have? Is each individual lives in these little societies that we talk about, these towns, these cities. Go out and be active in your community. Go out there and vote. Go out there and voice your opinion. Jumpstart people. You know, put that spark into them. You never know where that stuff is going to go. You know, go do a rally in your hometown. Be a part of the movement. Get people motivated. You know, just like when your battery kind of dies, you put the jumper cables on there and give them a jump start. Start pushing people. We have so many options available to us to reach so many different people. Let's build on that.
I think that's when you say the jumper cables, that's all about getting the ball moving, right? Like getting the flow of electricity back, or getting the cycle started again. I would throw out there the Baby Yoda thing as a note for myself, but we've had this year just a couple of things like that Baby Yoda just go nuts, right? And
Adventures in Babysitting, the Star Wars edition.
well, I mean, just to see a thing. Is there a word for viral? Like, I guess that's the word. Looking at something that is viral happen in front of us. That wasn't necessarily planned, but obviously Disney knows what they're doing, and they know how to set themselves up for something that's good. They know how to fold a paper airplane, and they just happen to catch the perfect wind. They can't make the wind, but they can make a good paper airplane. And that all kind of happened just recently here in front of us. So let me preface what I'm about to say with that. And I think what Roll Call was saying is the same thing as what I'm about to say in a different way. That unless you know what you're doing, you don't know what can be done, or unless you've seen it done, some people just can't picture it, right? So now I go back to my analogy that all of this is like mowing lawn. Like, nobody gets patted on the back, nobody gets a big celebration, because you mowed the lawn. Every once in a while, it costs you money. You got to buy a lawnmower, or you got to worry about it when you go on vacation. Like, it costs money to have to worry about the dang lawn. Nobody gives you anything in return. The best you can hope for is that, like, the neighborhood appreciates the effort you put in. But for the most part, I think our Second Amendment advocacy is, I like to use that analogy of mowing the lawn. Here's what I'd like to see 2020, and I hope this analogy works. If someone were to send out a postcard to a neighborhood and ask them to, each postcard would be a little different, but somebody might get a postcard and it said, could you please mow your lawn from left to right? And then the next guy would get, would you please mow your lawn from right to left? And then after weekend, everybody mowed their lawn and did what the postcard asked them. And now somebody took a drone up in the air and muted whoever the hell isn't muted, because it's annoying. Somebody takes a drone up in the air and looks down at the neighborhood and takes a photo. And what it turns out to be is Epstein didn't kill himself written in the grass, right? Because everybody did their pixel in a larger image, right? And there's a couple of things going on there. Everybody already mowed the lawn. They just did it in coordination. They didn't do anything different. They just did it with an intent. Once they see that drone image, other neighborhoods are going to write, Epstein didn't kill himself, or whatever funny thing, something about a Yoda baby, right? Other things are going to understand that that's a doable thing. Eventually it'll get old, and people are going to get sick of seeing things spelled out in the lawn of the neighborhoods. Do you see where I'm going with this? We are doing a bunch of efforts. We can coordinate and have tremendous results. we can wow people the first time they see us coordinate like that, and we can scare them. We're going to put some people in awe because they're not going to understand that we did it with a simple idea and some postcards. And with everyone working together, it created something wonderful. Now I'm going to take it to another level. If we'd stick a drone up there long enough that it could watch everyone take their unmowed lawns and turn it into, we coordinated them not just to the pixels, but to do it all at 7 o'clock a.m. And now we took a drone up and we made video of the raw lawns turning from, unkempt lawns into the words Epstein didn't kill himself. You see what I'm saying? Like, it just took it to another level. And we can continue to take these things to new levels by simply steps, increments, knowing that there's a destination and a goal, that we can change the way we've done it and not necessarily create a lot of extra burden or anything. And in the meantime, what do we do for the political strategist? If somebody comes along and says, for my scheme to work, I need a neighborhood to be disassociated. I need the neighborhood to not talk with their neighbors. What I need for my scheme to work is for these people to not like each other for some reason. And when they come along and they see there's a neighborhood that does a Christmas decorations, but they're together, like the Christmas decorations have some unity. They see that they do this effort every summer where they write Epstein didn't kill himself in the lawn with these drones. And they say, that's a neighborhood that is working together, that my scheme isn't going to work at. And then that person either decides to move along or ideally says, this lifestyle I have, scheming people, isn't the way to go. Instead, I'm going to get into drone tech, or I'm going to start building lawnmowers. So I think that as the gun community, we can take it to the next level. We can coordinate and be leaders in society and in tech. We can show people that there's ways to let go of YouTube and Facebook and the sucks that, that suggest that's the only way we can communicate with each other. Take some of that power back, use this internet that our parents created for us and gave us, that we're fluent in and our kids are freaking living in, and own it and show the rest of the world. You don't have to just do whatever Facebook or MeWe or whatever the stupid social is in their place, that instead we can look at this stuff in a different, just slightly different way and take everything back and use this as a tool. Anyway, then I think we're stronger, and then other communities out there can say, let's do like the gun owners did.
I agree.
Anyway, so that's my thing. It's like, how can we think of it as mowing the lawn, but how do we coordinate just enough so that we take our efforts and have some, what's the word, unity, some like bigger picture repercussions, something where the political strategists go, oh shit. What about pools that don't have fences around them? What about stairways that don't have railings? Let's go after, targets that don't have a constitutionally protected right behind them, that don't have a good portion of this country, who have a solid, feeling about this. Anyway, I guess that wasn't a question. Clover earlier had his show, and one of the things that Roll Call was talking about was jump starting the whole thing. And Clover was talking about something, and I was about to type in there, like, this is frustrating because we can't have a conversation. Like, you're just saying stuff that, and I forget what the heck it was.
I get to hold people hostage. It's awesome. Hold people hostage. You have to listen to just me. It's wonderful.
It was something about, I think, overall strategy, though, and whether or not it's worth poking the bear, maybe?
That's what you were...
Nah, see, I'll have to think of it. It was something that Roll Call said earlier, and it reminded me, but then I went off on that whole idea of, like, if we mowed lawns together in some kind of coordination and could show, from above, like, leave us alone, we're not working independently here, you haven't successfully divided us. Instead, there is this level of coordination that you can see because of the way that we're doing this. I kind of got sidetracked on that, but
The other point was just, I think I was going to ask you to clarify basically, because the way you said it, I'm sure was to get people to chat a bit or whatever, just to summarize it or make it more efficient to say it. But it was an interesting point, and it was something that, how we would attack next year, basically. Oh no, it was the politics. That's what it was. I said something in there like, are you going to go? Because you were talking about what you're doing next year, and you were saying like blah 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 everything
yeah.
you were going to do, and I was like, hey, are you going to just ignore that the election's happening? And I meant like, not necessarily that I expected your channel to become a political channel as much as, when you get to like, let's say September, October, talking to people about the new optic is just going to fall flat. Like talking to people about, a reticle choice is going to be about as effective as talking to a worm about fishing. So everybody's going to be focused on election. You either decide to go on vacation or tone it down or do something election-ish or something. So that's what I was going to ask you is, and roll call and the audience, because if y'all are here just to watch, go watch somebody who's entertaining. I'm hoping people show up to this chat. I invited 32 other people, I guess 30 other people, but the people that show up to be part of this hopefully are being part of the conversation. So do we ignore the election next year, or do we make it our 100% focus so that we, like roll call had said earlier, get out and vote, local, state, federal?
Well, I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to make it my 100% focus, because that would just completely change what I do, and I enjoy what I do, and I want all that to be a part of it. That said, you talk about September and there being a lull. I get it. Being a lull kind of comes about after the show season during the summertime and all of that. In my mind, that's too late. So there needs to be on my part, and my plan, and I mentioned this on my Instagram thing, was my plan is to focus more on the local level. That's what roll call was kind of talking about anyway. Just focus more on the local level and maybe pay attention to some local races, not particularly in my area. Obviously, I've got to pay attention to stuff in my area, but stuff that I can pick up. The internet's a wonderful thing. And the reason I say that waiting till September or something like that next year may be too late is a lot of local races, they're won or lost in the primaries. And a lot of people don't realize that. And they are. By the time the general election gets around, it's too late. You should have, the ideal candidate was available for you to choose during the primaries. And if he gets beat out in the primaries, you're done. At that point, you literally are trying to pick the lesser of two evils. Sometimes when it comes to 2A or when it comes to other particular issues, you just really don't got the choice. If you're going to vote, you're going to have to hold your nose and vote, which I absolutely hate doing that.
And when you're talking primaries, you're talking about you only have to win a portion of the party, and that's the portion of the party that votes in primaries. So it's a much smaller audience you got to win over. Whereas once you win that's true, less vote turnout. But then, and less for the opposition. But then once you get the nod, then all of a sudden you get resources that you could have never gotten without it. And now you've also got it's almost not an easy street, but you certainly aren't fighting up as a hill alone anymore.
Right. And it's, that's not necessarily true on a state or a national or a federal level, but on the local, that's true more often than not. Elections are won or lost in the primaries. So, I'm focusing right now on, obviously my county and the Republican primary for sheriff. But, I want to start looking at some other primaries in other parts of the country that, and just pick some, random. Maybe somebody said something in a newspaper or something like that, and start to pick some, and then maybe, try to get them on a podcast, try to do something, and maybe help bolster their numbers. Because, as I said on the Instagram thing, if, I'm not a huge channel. So, it's not like I'm going to have, I'm going to influence tens of thousands necessarily, or hundreds of thousands, or certainly millions of people. But if you're talking about a county where in a primary, can easily be won or lost with less than 100 votes. So if I can get out a video and push that in a certain direction or whatever, and somebody in that county or in that area pick that up and share it to their Facebook with 1,000 or 2,000 friends or whatever, and then 2 or 3 of their friends share, 2 or 3 of their friends share, and so forth and so on, I could potentially create a situation that swings 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 votes and change an election in a primary. It can happen, and it is feasible. So that's, if I'm going to do anything, I think that's where I'm going to put myself at. I think that's the plays that I'm going to try to make for the election year. Focus again, and do that with a goal of not really looking to sway or change or help influence or whatever election results, but more so bring awareness to the fact that people need to be paid. We harp, and it's the flavor of the day, and it's dramatic, and it gets all the views and everything else when we complain about state senators and state representatives and governors and federal senators and federal representatives and the president, the Supreme Court, these people and that people that are way far up the chain, and we have little to no influence over, unfortunately. However, we have way more influence with our local officials, and the vast majority of this country is overlooking that. They just dismiss that. They say, "Oh, well, I don't vote." Well, why not? Well, because they are already predetermined, and whoever's going to win is going to win, and Republicans are just as bad as the Democrats, blah, 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 and they don't realize that on a local level, that's not true. So if you want to change the dynamic on the upper level, then you need to get your butts out. You need to vote, particularly in the lower level, because that's the way politics works. Again, we go back to, an hour ago when I was talking about this on here. We need to learn civics, and we need to learn politics, and we need to learn how all of that works. And the way that works is people don't just come out of the blue and all of a sudden they're, a politician. And I say that does happen, but it's not the norm. The norm is you work your way up, and you look at Mayor Buttigieg or whatever it is that's running for, right? He was a mayor in a city. I don't know his political leanings or offices or whatever before that, quite honestly. But he went from mayor to a presidential candidate. There was some type of stepping stone there, right? And more often than not, that is the case when you're talking about politics. So if you can get these people and weed them the heck out, at the local level before they get up the chain, then do we have a chance to have some people up there who will actually do the bidding of the people, that will actually follow the Constitution, that will actually do the right thing? Maybe so. Now, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Yes, I understand that. But if we can get sound, constitutional-minded, good people at the local level voted in, and they proceed to have aspirations to move up that chain, then the likelihood of that happening is, even though the threat is always there, the likelihood of it is far less. It's not a quick fix. It's not an easy fix. It's not an instant fix. But you know what? We didn't get into the issues, the troubles, the problems, whatever you want to call them, that we have nowadays. We didn't get into this in the last election. This didn't happen with Trump. This didn't happen with Obama or Bush Jr. or Clinton. This has happened over the last 100, 150, 100, good Lord, 70 or 80 years. It's just been a steady whittle at our political system, at our, that has, of course, influenced society in a lot of different things. So, it's going to require work, and it's going to require a lot of baby steps, and it's all got to start at the local level.
All right. Roll call, you want to throw anything in there before I just was looking? It's kind of neat. Am I I'm not really screen sharing, I don't think, but, when we're in the gun chamber, or gun tube chamber, there's a little thing. I think you all can click on that thing at the top, where you click on it and it tells you how long everybody's been talking. So if I click on it, it tells me I've been talking for an hour and 20 minutes in here. Clover's been talking for 30, and roll call's got 7 minutes on the clock. So,
I don't see it.
No, I don't see that either.
okay, maybe it's just,
Oh,
it's up where it says Daily Gun Show, dead center, top of the screen. For me, it's a little.
So whenever,
It might be because I'm in control of the room or whatever. But anyhow, I wanted to give roll call a chance before I dig into it. Clover was
Yeah.
saying.
I agree with Clover on what he says about your local. My mayor was so corrupt, but he only lost by 3% of the vote. It was one of the lowest voter turnouts after this guy, pretty much tried to disband the police department
Hey, what city?
because it's done. I live in Michigan City. It's a small town, but I mean the dude lost by 3% after he was convicted of like multiple felonies, multiple charges, and this shows you that Clover's not lying to you. This starts at the local level. This starts in your community. Vet the people that are running first of all for these positions, because they can always say one thing and do another, but if you really study them, you really listen to them, and you pick their brains, and it kind of sucks sometimes when you have to go and watch them speak, but you really should look at the people that you put in these positions. These are the people that are going to be running your small town, being your sheriff, things of that nature. You really need to look at them and at times scrutinize them and make sure they hold true to what they're going to run on and their beliefs on the future of where you live. For crying out loud, the dude won by 3% after he tried to disband the whole police department because his son got caught with drugs and a gun and he's a violent felon.
So Ro, I just pulled up the population of Michigan City, because when we say 3%, here's where numbers come into play. Give somebody some perspective, right? So I just pulled up the population of Michigan City. 3% of the entire population, not of eligible voters, not even of voters that did vote. 3% of the entire population, including babies and felons and people that can't vote or whatever. That's 810 people.
Yeah.
That's out of the entire population, not out of voter turnout. That number gets drastically smaller.
So in other words, how many did you say the population was? The total population?
I'm looking at it says 27,098.
Well, that is not a big town. So even if you made that a little bit bigger and you said it was 270,000 or whatever, 300,000-ish, whatever size town, city that is, and then you just added another zero to your other number. So now instead of being 800, it's 8,000. That's still, like you're saying, that's just that's the 3% of that was the influential vote, but that's of the whole population. Only a certain percentage goes to vote. So out of that 27,000 or the 270,000, we don't know what the voting turnout is, but just to make the math easy, let's say it's only a third, only 100,000 or only 10,000 people even vote. Now that number goes down to 300 or 3,000. Like it goes down, percentage. So that turns into a very low number, which is sort of, you could think of it, if you wanted to be a pessimist, go, oh, that's a needle in a haystack. Now you've got even fewer people you've got to reach in that great population. How do you reach them? But I'd suggest the people that are voting are probably, aware of the kind of things that gun owners are interested in, cars and all the activities that gun owners would do, I guess. I don't know, there's too many to list, right? But, all this, whatever it is, we like guns and, you know what I mean? Like if we were just, I guess what I'm getting at is by including, how do you get to where Clover's talking about? How do you get to this concept of getting people aware and interested in voting locally? I think by creating content that's interesting and you're having fun with for you and your community of people. Either that's the people that like the area of interest you're into or the region or whatever, something that unifies you with, with something you like. You do content for you and your people that you like, and then you include your other interests. And then you get, again, your locality and your other interests in with your firearms. You include the civics part of politics with that, the awareness of, you know, what's going on, and then when appropriate, a call to action once in a while. And then hopefully you kind of spread the word, right, with people who are like-minded. So it might be a needle in a haystack. You only need a few people to affect change. And how do you reach those few people? It's extremely expensive to try to find them. But if you're one of them, how effective can you be if you just take a second to let people know, hey, if we were to take a picture of this from space, what would it look like if we all mowed our lawns at 7 o'clock in a coordination? What would it look like if we all voted locally?
Let me talk to people a little bit. Let me tell people exactly how easy it is to figure a lot of this stuff out, right? Because that's what helps you get a battle plan. So first of all, usually your cities or counties are going to have a website, and election results and turnout, voter turnout, and stuff like that are not available on that website because some cities are not. Some cities and counties and whatnot may be old school, podunk. My county's that way. Not a lot of money. But you can go down to the county elections office and get copies of all this. Ro, just so you're aware, he won by 165 votes.
Yeah,
Yeah. So like I said,
it's not much.
yeah, like I said, you're telling me that somebody can't influence 165 people? Come on.
Yeah, I mean, I get on Facebook, and a lot of my friends on Facebook are people in my area. It's not so much YouTube centric. It's just people in my area, long-time friends, things of that nature. We're getting out there and getting on that platform and saying, look, hey, get your butt up. Go vote. You know, get out of your seat. Who cares about Sunday football? Go early vote. If anything, there's early voting. A lot of the young kids don't know about this. And a lot of these younger kids, you know, like my daughter's going to be voting this year. You know, tell her, you know, you're about to experience something that was fought for, you know, all through this great time in this country. You're about to do something. Young people too. Young people turned out more than some of the older crowd this year. But yet it was still a low number of turnouts. Some of the lowest numbers that they've seen in years. Young people are a huge key to this. And I tell her, you know, the two girls, you're about to embark in something that you're going to actually change. You're going to change momentum. You're going to change momentum in your life. It's a life-changing experience when you go there and nowadays you push that button and you vote. And it'll make you feel different about yourself. It'll make you feel different about your community. It'll make you feel that you're starting to make an impact. But just by pushing that button means don't stop. Just by pushing that button means like, okay, I'm done, I'm going to go. No, continue to become active in your community. Join a club. Help some of the disenfranchised kids in this area. Be a part of the community. Pushing that button, it doesn't stop there. And I think that's sometimes some of the stuff that the younger generation has to get over. Pushing that button, it doesn't stop there. You can continue this fight. You can continue to further your agenda when you get older. Teaching them about firearms is half the battle, but teaching them about the political process is part of the bigger battle. And I think they'll experience this year. I can't wait to watch them walk into that voting booth and come out of there with a smile on their face. But it doesn't end there, and that's what I always instill in them. You gotta keep on doing this. And you have to do it year after year. Just don't vote this year. You know, children, continue to vote until you're in your golden years.
Well, one thing that aggravates me is the people that don't use social and don't use these platforms. And everybody has their reasons. I don't like it, or I don't like Zuckerberg. That's the whole I don't like Zuckerberg, or I don't like Susan Wojcicki, or whatever. Or, that's dumb. Sorry, it's dumb. When you're talking about me on Facebook, for example, my fear of Zuckerberg or hatred of Zuckerberg, like me not being on Facebook is hurting him any at all, or disrupting the platform any at all. I'm using that for some type of positive benefit, which I can do. You know, instead of looking at the negatives and Zuckerberg being a rat and a snake, running a crappy platform and all this other stuff, I flip it around and I say, okay, in a situation like, and I got to tell you, your city, roll call, is more population in your city than there is in my county, right? So you're talking about a county election being able to swing, not even a city election here. But, you know, I potentially got over 2,000, nearly 3,000 friends on something like that on between 2,000 and 3,000 on Facebook. And I've got a legitimate shot at being able to help turn an election one way or another within 165 votes. And to me, that's far more valuable than the unrealistic poker jab that I'm giving Zuckerberg by not using his platform. And that's my 2 cents. And I get everybody's got to make that decision for themselves. But those that do make that decision, I don't understand. And that's why.
Again, that's why, you know, people say diversify. Become involved in all these platforms. You might not like them, like you said, and I'm not a huge fan of them. I like other platforms over other ones, but if you don't use these things, you're not going to reach what you're explaining. The potential outcome of reaching someone, changing their mind, changing their opinion, and making them, you know, rethink and reevaluate what they're doing to push whatever agenda it may be, and continue to have them be involved. The thing is, when big changes happen, they're like, okay, and they put their hands in their pocket and they walk away. Keeping them involved, keeping them informed, keeping them into the game, it is the hardest part. But by using these platforms, you can always reach them. You could always put that reminder into the back of their minds that say, this is what we have to do. We have to continue to do this. And you know, you telling me those numbers, I'm going to keep on using that platform a little bit more, and pushing it out there. People that, what you said about the people that don't use platforms because they disagree with whatever, well, this is a great way. Guess what? Elizabeth Warren hates Facebook. She hates Zuckerberg. So guess what? Why don't you use that? Why don't you use that? Nobody likes that lady. She's weird. She's uncontrollable. So let's use that platform. Let's put that in motion. Let's drive her crazy and use it and push the agenda and keep on moving forward and changing people's opinion. This stuff is crucial and critical next year. The more people that get out there and they become active, the better chance that we have at winning the small fights, and then maybe accomplishing one big goal throughout that year, and just to keep on push forward and win these small battles till we get a really good one. But don't ever stop.
Well,
Just keep on pressing.
and you know, you don't even have to change minds. You know, that's the beauty of this. Because look at, and again, I go back to nerding out, geeking out on these numbers and stuff. But go back to the numbers you were putting out, right? The 3% in your city for the mayoral vote, right? The 3% that was won 165 votes. You know darn well those 165 people that didn't even go vote. You don't have to change their mind. You just got to persuade them to actually go vote, right? That's a lot easier than changing their mind.
Now imagine if you
Have them go out there and go.
imagine a situation where you get an organization of people locally or whatever the region, because it can happen at any level, but you get an organization of people together. And I guess this is basically just describing what the big organizations do. But you get people organized, you vote, and then you make it vocal ahead of time. You can't just go along after and say, oh yeah, I meant to do that. But instead you call your shot ahead of time. Everybody in coordination ahead of time with some intent says, here's our position, we're making it clear, we're voting this way, and we encourage you to. Everybody's different message, you know, however you affect it, you make it clear ahead of time that that's your position. Now everything goes according to plan,
Your person is in. Now you're looking at that same election results. Flip it around, and now we're the winners of that election, and we won by 165 votes or whatever the number happened to be. And you have a group of 300 people. Imagine your influence with that elected official, with that representative. You represent us. Our efforts are the reason you're here. Here's what we'd like. And that's the way it's supposed to work, right? I mean, at least as a representative, he's then going to take that and weigh it with everybody else. He's not going to just owe you, but he's going to appreciate your significance and your ability to work together. He's going to understand what you potentially have in the future. And as long as you're not asking for something unscrupulous, or, you know, I'm assuming you're backing a good person, everything's good. You're asking for something that's not unreasonable, you've got an ally. And now let's say that something else happens, you're resistant against that, you're resilient against it. And I guess people can use that for other things or something, but I still say we're a stronger community, a stronger country when everybody realizes we've got that power.
You've got clout if they do screw up too, right? I mean, let's take for example Trump. Trump's on a lot of things I don't agree with. Well, if that was on a local level, I mean, first of all, I can go down and get the state. That's what they do. What are you smoking? What's going on here? You know, and then I turn around and I go, you know, you only won by 3%, right? You only won by 165 votes last time, right? You keep screwing up like this, you won't win next time. I'll make sure of that. You know, and it'll actually mean something. And the other point I was going to make, and you and Roll Call both, when y'all spoke, kind of sparked this in the back of my mind, and I thought, oh snap, I didn't even think about it this way. We're talking about influence because Ozzy out there said the same thing. He said this has about 12,000 people. He knows on Facebook he's able to make some kind of a difference, maybe 0.5%, maybe a 1%, whatever. But you know he can make a difference regardless. So here's the thing: if we're able to get those people, like I said, let's not talk about changing minds or changing the vote. Let's talk about just getting, because voter turnout is anemic. It always is, especially in primaries, especially in alternate, or what do they call it, off elections, opposite presidential elections, stuff like that. It's anemic anyway. It's really anemic in those situations. So let's look at a situation where we can inspire people to actually come out and vote. And we inspire them on a local level, right, to come out and vote locally. But intermingled with that, here's a question I want to pose. Intermingled with that, is there an opportunity to also talk about some national stuff? Is there an opportunity to talk about Roll Call's mayor, let's say? Oh, we need to vote for this guy's mayor. He's good, blah, 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 blah. And then they go, oh, well, what about the other people on the ballot? Oh, well, you know, that Elizabeth Warren, you know, she does this, that, or the other, or this senator, you know, you really need to get him out of there, too. So you get a chance to influence in a certain way. You get a chance also, or the potential, to influence, I think, larger level elections, higher up elections. And we all know that votes at the city, county, region, district, region, state level, all of that adds up eventually, right? When you see the polls running on election night, it's by county. It's by county. It's not by necessarily, it's not by state necessarily. It's not by all of that. All of that state, all of the cities add up, the states add up, all of that, you know, counties add up, and then all of that is added to the national averages and totals, or for the senator for the state, or representatives for the district or region or whatever. But it all starts at the ground level. That's where it all comes from. So I don't know what everybody else's opinion of that is, but if we're able to get inspiring more voters to the poll using that local hook, then is there the potential to actually maybe change national, state level for sure, or possibly national elections just by that little local grassroots movement?
Yeah, that's how the prohibition. That's how everything happens. That's how prohibition happened.
Yeah, and I want to add this, but Clover's right, and I'll tell you why. It's because after this guy, after my mayor, after everything happened, guess what? There's something going on at the lakefront over where I am, because I live on Lake Michigan. And all of a sudden now our representative, Pete Laskowski, is resigning. Well, he's not going to run for another term. Well, because he was in cahoots with this mayor that wanted to develop the lakefront for the people of Chicago. So now we have a chance not only to change our mayor, change the landscape of our lakefront, and now get a representative that's not going to fall in step with democratic policies. He's not lying to you folks. This all runs downhill. We have a chance. Next year, we have a chance in my area. We've already changed the mayor. Now we have a chance to take another step, like Clover says, and change our representative. Now, after our representative comes our governor. Then after our governor, it just keep going up the steps. We have a chance to continue to keep certain things in place. This guy wasn't for gun rights. I've wrote him numerous times. I've posted it on my Instagram, my Facebook, of every time writing this guy not to vote for the bump stock ban. What do you think he did? He voted for it. Now we have an opportunity to never have somebody like that in the position that he's not going to run for. So now my goal is now to tell these people that are in my area, look, this guy's not coming back. Now it's time to put somebody in there that's not going to vote for this crazy stuff. That's not going to put this crappy narrative in the water in this region. And we have a chance to make a difference, to continue this. It starts from the ground up. And I just gave you this example, this wonderful example. And now that we're changing this aspect of life here, now we're moving to a national aspect to change it there. And that's why Mike Braun is in the position that he is now. And he agrees with some of the things that go on, whether it be the Second Amendment or whatever else follows in society. And there's a reason for that, because we're changing it. We're changing the dynamics by using social media, by doing our research, by vetting our candidates, and making sure that we hold them accountable when they do fail, when they do ride the backs of other people, but turn around and do the opposite. This is the chance in this next coming year for my community, my area, LaPorte County, to really dig deep and really instill, so we don't have to declare ourselves as a sanctuary county. Our permits are free next year to carry a firearm, folks. When have you ever heard that your state is giving you permits? I don't think we should have permits. I believe in constitutional care, but they're giving our permits for us for free next year. And I reiterate that to every person that hits my counter at the gun shop. Anybody that's on Facebook, the people I see at the grocery store, the people I see at Cabela's, the people that I see anywhere, and I tell them, take advantage of this opportunity. They don't come around, and the people in New York, the pro-gun people there, would probably be drooling at this opportunity. These people that may issue state, they would drool at this opportunity that their legislators, that Mike Braun and the people that are put in this position are giving you a permit for free, and you don't have to pay anything. You have to pay your BS fingerprints and all that stuff, but it's like $10. What's $10? That's one less McDonald's meal. To get a permit to carry a firearm and protect yourself, your family, or anything else that happens. I'm telling you, change can happen. The big thing is keeping that momentum to keep making these changes happen and then keeping them in place. Keeping them in place is one of the hardest things to do. Right. As long as, like G talked about, we work as a community, these things can happen.
You're ghosting us. You're giving too many points out here, so I got to stop. So hit some of them. I'll try to go backwards. I leave notes in the internal and then some a little bit in the outside there. And again, this is a conversation, so hopefully people are interacting with a little bit of a lag, of course, because we're doing this weird, but be part of the conversation. But I wanted to address a couple of things, if I can remember everything, so I'm trying to keep all of it straight here. Address a couple of things you brought up, palate cleanse, and shift a little bit. So what I'm going to shift to, unless Clover has something to directly add to that, what I'd like to shift to is,
I mean, everything we're saying here isn't as bad as when I like to say we're shaking our fist at the sky and complaining about the clouds or whatever. We're not just preaching to the choir here. We're saying some stuff that is obvious, but doesn't get said very often. So we're saying some stuff, though, that is, I don't know what the word is. We're not preaching to the choir, but we're just saying stuff that needs to be done. Okay, it's like knowing that, we have to exercise and eat right to get in shape or whatever. You have to do it. But, when we're having a conversation, since we all know what the steps are and the ideal steps would be, how do we actually talk about something that we can do? So again, I'm going to kind of shift direction here and ask in a minute here, are we paying attention to what the other side is doing? So while we are aware, some of us painfully aware of how inefficient we are, of how efficient and ultimately effective we could be with coordination on our side, and I'm talking anybody who's pro-gun owners' rights. The gun prohibitionists are out there doing their thing. Are they taking advantage of all the things that we wish our side would be taking advantage of? In other words, I'm asking, while we're sitting here wishing we could, are they effectively doing? Are they prepping to just wipe the floor with us, either doing the strategies we're talking about or other strategies, while we're sitting over here being ineffective? That's the question, but I'm going to palate cleanse with a little something extra for a roll call. So I've had the opportunity to go where roll call lives, and I know that neck of the woods pretty good from back in the day. And I can offer you something that you can take to the mayor, and then you're going to be able to get anything you want from the mayor from then on. So all you got to do to make your town a bunch of money is go get a good deal on 55-gallon drums and knock the front and the back out of all of them, and then start gluing them together or welding them or something, right? Get a giant tube made out of these 55-gallon drums, run it straight over to Chicago, and then you got the only pipeline between almost Michigan and Chicago. Bypass all that traffic, you run a remote control car or two down that tube, and you'll be flowing in money. You'll have all kinds of Chicago money over there. You're welcome. So if we're sitting here doing nothing, is the other side about to mop the street with us? I mean, I don't want to look at, I asked the question earlier, what are we going to do next year? You guys answered the question, and I'm saying, oh snap, are we waiting? Did we wait too long? Are we paying attention to what they do?
Not at all. It's a cycle. That's what, and I think it's evident that it's a cycle by the amount of people within inside the firearm community, the 2A movement, so forth and so on. I think it's evident by the new people coming in, the people that come in that are like, oh, the sky's the end of the world, the sky's falling, and it's all over, and you're thinking, the same legislation was proposed 10 years ago, or the same thing was in play 20 years ago, or, by those of us that have paid attention that long, right? That there's an ebb and a flow, there's a cycle to it. And, sometimes we come out of the cycle fairly unscathed. Sometimes, we get beat all around. Sometimes it's kind of a wash. We beat on them, they beat on us. The outcome is always a little different. I think historically, if you wrote it out in a chart, which you do all the time, timelines and stuff like that. I think it's obvious to say that we've lost all kinds of freedom when it comes to the 2A. But we've lost them over a very, very long span of years. It's not like something that's just happened over, you average it out anyway. It's not just things that just happened overnight or within the last month or within the last year or anything like that. So that's the beautiful thing about it. That's the beautiful thing that's a saving grace, I guess, as to where, when we go through those apathetic phases, lazy phases, the other stuff like that, I think that's our saving grace, is that it does happen in cycles. So that affords us, when those cycles line up just right, that affords us the opportunity to do that, not really lose that much ground. We look at a lot of things. I mean, we talk about Virginia again, but Virginia hasn't happened yet. We can look at Washington, seemingly a loss at this point, but you know it's still being fought. We don't know. There's other things that have not made it up to the Supreme Court yet. We don't know. There's a lot of things that are in play. And we look at actual tangible stuff this year that are given up on, let's say, already added to the loss column permanently. And then we look at wins. I don't know. I mean, I think that tells a different picture. You were talking earlier, G, about the end of the year where they just talked about the good things. I talk about that myself. I mean, we have to, however small, we have to relish and recognize those wins. And I think in 2019, we talked a lot about them so far in the first part of the show. We've had a lot of wins. Despite the 2 or 3 or 4, or I don't know, not a huge amount of what we might consider losses. We've had a lot of wins. I mean, I can think of 4 states alone that got constitutional carry. That's not counting other legislation and things that were passed that opened up and freed up the Second Amendment, firearm ownership, and all of that stuff. More so than it was before. So,
And
I think
what happened to the
the
NRA?
bigger picture of things a lot of times.
I'm going to throw in there also on top of that something that doesn't get looked at. I haven't seen anybody look at is what's happened at the NRA, right? I would say good or bad, but I don't think anyone is suggesting that what's happening with the NRA is good. With what's happened with the NRA in a different universe, in a different, almost parallel universe, could have ended any hope of the Second Amendment in a let's call it a Hillary version of the universe, where Epstein also didn't kill himself, right? You've got the potential for something going completely differently with a weak NRA or a failed NRA or a corrupt couple of people and an apathetic membership, and all the things lined, all the stars lined up, and the NRA got Hillaried, literally, right? What would happen to the Second Amendment if, in some universe, like that would be the end of it? The last few people in the country who are, dedicated to that vice of violence, who insisted on some archaic, old person concept of violence is better than peacefulness, right? If those people finally lost their stodgy old and infested, the hierarchy, and it failed, then all the stores would stop selling because it'd be cool to quit selling guns, and gun shops would be taxed or zoned or regulated out of existence, and anybody who still owned these things would have to start drilling holes and demilitarizing them like they do in other countries. So yeah, you can fetishize your violence all you want, but it can never operate again. And then, what about that country? And I think we need to remember that could have happened. That's not like some crazy alternate timeline. That's just a different consequence of one election. And this same situation with a corrupt couple of individuals and an apathetic membership that allowed it to fail like it has could literally be the end. But instead, what I'm trying to get at, I'm saying it long here, but instead, we have a community that was resilient enough to know when to ignore, to know what was a BS message and what was valid, to know who to support and who to not. And then I'm going to go ahead and say it even further, if everybody's still tracking with me there, that it's not just YouTube, but it's the new media. It's the activists and archivers and researchers and lawyers and all the people who we consider the people whose shoulders we stand on. It's those people's individual efforts that combined created the environment where the NRA can literally crumble in front of us from within. Admittedly, I'm going to keep saying due to our own apathy, but it's happening in front of us, and that's definitely happening on a stage with all kinds of spotlights, with everybody who hates us. All the gun prohibitionists are loving this, and this is a perfect storm for them. Actually, it's not. It should be a perfect storm for them, but again, because of the observed scenario situation that we live in today, the NRA, that situation, that the NRA fallen isn't detrimental to us or the Second Amendment or to our descendants, really. Anyway, that's a super long way of saying nobody's focused on that yet.
Yeah, what you said out in the chat about the prohibitions being allowed, because they're kind of at the end of the rope. They always scream the loudest when at the end. Ozzy out there, he's saying that he doesn't think we waited too long, but he thinks we're up against the ropes and it's time to throw our best punches. I disagree. I don't think we're the ones against the ropes. If you look at any fight, and take that example because that's a boxing reference, when somebody starts losing and they've taken some really hard punches and stuff, and they start to lose, typically they lose composure. They start flailing. They start swinging. Look at a boxing match. Look at a street scrap. Right. Look at anything. Right. They start just wailing and swinging wild and whatever. That's just the way a fight goes. Right. And our side is not the side that's doing that. The other side is the side that just swings wildly, hoping that something sticks. And that's not a sign of winning. It's just not.
You said it totally differently than I was, but I was going to say the same thing. You got to look at not the volume or the repetitiveness of their message, but the value and what their message is, the efficiency, effectiveness of their message. And we said it different ways, but yeah, I was going to say when all they do is the same old boilerplate, erase the date and put in the new date, erase the victim that you're exploiting and bring the new one in to exploit callously, except for that, these things are the same attack over and over again. I don't think that's a hint that they're either not really paying attention, they're not really, they're just phoning it in, or they have no resources left. They have no foot to stand on. We know their position's invalid, but they don't even have a way to dupe the public anymore.
Right. Well, and you've got, with the fight reference, with the fight analogy, a couple other things that play with that too. First of all is the flailing around and randomly landing a punch here and there. We're so accustomed to being beat on, right? We're so accustomed with 150 years, 120 years anyway, of some type of gun control that we're hardened by it, right? We take those blows a little bit better than they take blows. So we're kind of used to it. We're tough. So when they flail around, okay, they may smack us every now and then, but you know what? It's not an NFA, right? It's not a gun control act in 1968. Assault weapon ban was overturned, so I don't know that we would count that anymore. But it certainly wasn't something. The NFA and the Gun Control Act were definitely the two groundbreaking, sweeping game changers for sure. And they've landed nothing like that. So we're able to take those wild swings and stuff like that, kind of take them on the chin, and still keep our composure. But then when we punch, right, we're tactical about it. We're not swinging wild. And when we punch, we're going straight for the nose with everything we've got behind it. So it's a little more calculated maneuver.
Seriously.
And it rattles them even more. It rattles them even more to the point that they're swinging even more wildly. So
I love
that analogy that you and Ozzy both have thrown out there.
So if you look at it that way, and again, I'm cutting off roll call, feel free to jump in, don't be polite. If you look at it that way, what are they doing? They're doing the chick from Monsanto. What's her name? Who runs the Moms Demand stuff? Watts. Watts is from Monsanto. So, is there anything about Monsanto anybody likes other than eating their stuff for some reason? Monsanto, love them or hate them, they created Watts. Now she works for Bloomberg. Year after year. How many years
I guess it would be pretty simple to do a quick internet search. Okay, watts, watts, watts. What's your answer? Watts. What's your answer? Watts, right? Watts, watts, watts. Love it, right? And then what's ours? Try to go backwards. In 2019, who's new to the scene? In 2018, who's new to the scene? 2017, who's new to the scene? Talk about inclusion and diversity. On the other side, watts, 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 watts. Exploit children. Watts, 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 watts. So yeah, I love that. So how often does that get focused on? That their answer to everything is Monsanto Watts and a couple of kids who were standing next to an atrocity and are now being exploited and paid. Or you just, I mean, do we have to even start naming our side? Look who's coming in and to bat on our side. Who is being welcomed and encouraged and funded. Look how much money Maj is getting. Look how much money Full 30's getting.
Well, that's what I was fixing to say. You're leaving one figure out of that, which is Bloomberg, right? Who's always been Bloomberg, blah, 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 blah. I get tired of hearing Bloomberg.
Yeah, it's all Bloomberg. It's only him.
There's a very stark contrast between the money on their side and the money on our side. The money on their side is one old dude billionaire that wants the world the way he wants the world, right? Our side, look at how diverse the
I think
money,
it's
the monetary backing.
I hear you. It's more accurate to say, though, the 14th most wealthy person in the world, the 14th most wealthy person on this planet of rock that flies around a bunch of void with a little bit of thin atmosphere around it, however many 6.6 billion people on it, or is there more than that? 60? I don't know how many billions of people. There's all of them have a ranking of how much money they got. He's number 14, and he wants to tell us how much we can drink in a soda.
And he's not winning. And because if he was, he would already had the world in his hand, correct?
At least we'd be drinking 16-ounce sodas or whatever he wants, right? We all have no magazines if that's what he wanted. We'd have all have 9mm or something horrible if that's what he wanted.
You got to figure with the amount of money he's got, the amount of money they dump into all of this stuff, you would really think it would be a lot worse than what it is.
No, in fact, I think that he drops, and I'll say this because I'm gonna do like our show says. We say the stuff live that other chats won't even touch, especially Honda, who only barely looks at stuff with 20/20 hindsight and is afraid to touch real conspiracies. But he wants it to be just exactly the flavor, the amount of heat he needs for that simmer. You don't want it to boil. He needs us. You know what I mean? Like he makes a lot of money. He's got $14 billion or whatever. A whole bunch of that is in other markets, but he speaks English. He lives here, right? We're the ones he's bullying on because of whatever fondness he has for bullying our culture. But instead of taking that and making a big building, or let's look at the huge, horrible rich people from the past, Carnegie and Stanford and all the names of the universities, right? Let's look at what they did with their huge amounts of money and what they've left behind, and what's this guy going to leave behind. So I think that this is an intentional something to keep a simmer so that he doesn't ruin what he's cooking. And
Well, it's true. And here's the other thing, not to get morbid with it, but old dude is not the youngest person running around. So, what happens when he's gone? What happens when
well, the same thing that, again, like you look at somebody who cares, somebody who had cancer in their family or some other disease in their family, what do they leave? A giant pile, and I'm talking giant pile of money that sits there and festers, and it creates interest, and that interest is used to kick something on through the rest of time. And that's how we fought lots of diseases, and that's how we've changed the world in many ways. But yeah, who knows what he's going to set up as trusts and, the blah, blah, blah institute of hating the world or something.
Is the gun control cause huge enough for him to leave that significant amount of money once he's gone, or is this just a hobby for him?
Oh, well, when you're the 14th richest person in the world, you've attained a level that you're in the top 20. So either you accidentally got there, you married into it, and the other person died, right? And you just are left with it and you haven't given it away yet, because that happens quite a bit. Or you're pursuing fame and destiny, or whatever they call legacy, or blah, blah, blah. So, I don't know. What is this guy's legacy? To pick on us and to try to affect our culture, to try to show that individualism and liberty and an experiment where 50 individual governments work together and stand together with individuals is a failure. And, by removing the teeth of it, he hopes that it'll fail and he can be known from the future Nazi commies or whoever he thinks is going to rule the world, that he's the one that helped pull the teeth of the thing. I don't know. I think he's looking at legacy at this point. I don't think it's money. If he was searching for money, he'd be the 13th wealthiest. He'd be the 10th wealthiest, right? I think he's attained what he's attained, and now he's looking back and trying to create a legacy or something. Maybe that's the way to fight. How do you fight somebody who's creating legacy? Make them look like a moron, right? Like, make them look like their legacy is to tell the world that five-legged dogs should exist, and they're just ridiculous or something.
Does he have any kids? Who is he, or is he just going to leave this money to like organizations, or does he have next to kin or something?
He must.
That's a good question. I'm not real sure.
Like,
I think he has a couple of daughters, doesn't he?
But again, now going up against that, we've been kind of diverted because of your concept of like, I was saying that they're bringing the same game or the same strategy to the game year after year, and you're saying it's the same guy bringing the strategy to the game year after year. Is it to our advantage? Well, okay, it's not to our advantage or anything. Our only option, what's the word? Our only strategy, whatever. We don't just have to worry about that guy. I think that by defending him effectively, and then he's gone. Let's say we figure out something tonight on this chat. It's easy, and we figure it out. Like 6 other people help us, and we get rid of him. He's gone. Like, legal, fair, healthy way. He just decided. We talked him into it. He's out of there. Are we a better community? Are we a stronger community? That's like the Superman coming in and taking care of something. So, plotting, the potential for him being out of the race, or thinking about what he might do and working against it. Are we better off just becoming a stronger community so that people like him in the future don't effort in this direction, so that instead of them, the next one thinking, oh, well, they did XYZ, I'll just do, square, triangle, circle instead. They'll never figure that out and then zap us with the same concept? Or do we just show that we're not just that we're resilient, like you can't touch us, but instead educate and say, here's why we have this position. Youths are being told that we fantasize or we fetishize violence. You're crazy. We don't like violence as much as anybody. It's just that we understand reality, and we know that by having a fire extinguisher, you're not fetishizing a lighter. You're not carrying around the materials for arson. You're trying to resist against any possible harm to yourself, the community, and your family, and all that, blah, blah, blah. We educate them, and maybe we created a future where Bloomberg doesn't happen because they don't want to be at Bloomberg, not because they can't be at Bloomberg, or that we've created a better fence against a Bloomberg.
No, I think it benefits us to be stronger. I mean, it's always, and after him, it'll be somebody else. But it's that's always the case, right? I mean, we always want to rally. You got that villain that you rally around, to an extent. I mean, it's the whole yin and yang concept, right? The polarity concept, or whatever you want to call it. So, no, I totally agree. Building, rather than trying to go after him or whatever. Yeah, we just build our cause, bolster our ranks, build our movements, increase our infrastructure, and then the next person that come along. I mean, you're talking about the 14th richest guy in the world, right? So the next person that comes along that is less than the 14th richest person in the world, they potentially are going to have some pause, because they're like, I really want gun control. I really want to push this. I really want to beat up on these people over here, these gun lovers, gun fetishers, whatever they want to call us. But if Bloomberg couldn't do it, how much money am I going to waste? Yeah, I think I'll go pick on these people, or I think I'll go fight this cause instead.
Yeah. Or like, look, he put all those resources and it didn't work, right? So that tells us that maybe it's not even valid. Maybe it was an incorrect position, especially if we can win by education, win by understanding and not by just defense or whatever. But then the other thing is, yeah, like, okay, the 14th richest person on the planet with, one person, not a corporation, not an entity that was that powerful or that many resources, one guy who has just his discretion, can do whatever he wants with those resources. He wasn't able to. Best we could do to even match him is get 3 or 4 entities together to just match the amount of financial resources, and then we'd have to deal with their position on XYZ, and we don't like that, and we'd have to deal with their position on XYZ, and you know what I'm saying? Like that would immediately fragment or divide any potential equivalent to Bloomberg in the future. So I think, yeah, defending against him specifically is like learning how to defeat a giant. What you really want to do is learn how to defend against what a giant can put out, because then, like you say, it has to either be a bigger giant or a massive amount of people, and they're going to look at that and go, no, there's no way to fight this turtle or this Second Amendment advocate anymore.
I think it would benefit us. I mean, then that just weakens Mom Demands Action, every town that mattered, or whatever they're called. It weakens their position. Would it ever get rid of them? I don't think so. I think there's a little bit more than just Bloomberg's money into it. When you see actors and people like that facilitating behind the scenes, but it definitely would weaken them to the point where we can say, hey, look, these people weren't really into it. They're really not into it. They're funded by someone. If you look at us, we're funded by each other, or we're funded by small organizations. I think that'd be a huge goal. If this guy got a paper cut from money, all the money he has, and, he got an infection in his finger, and he went away. But I think that would weaken them financially, because I don't think these people have the mentality that we do to stay in the fight. A lot of people talk about boxing, like you guys referenced. How you win these rounds is by landing effective punches. That's how you win this fight. We never wanted to go to a decision, and we always want that knockout. But you have to win these rounds in case it comes to the decision. It's ruled in your favor.
Dang, roll call. You might not be. I don't know. You might only have 21 minutes and 35 seconds in this chat, to Clover's 47, but yeah, you hit some good points there. Did you want to hit something, Clover? I'm about to pivot. I'm about to change direction on it, unless you wanted to hit something directly.
Change direction. I'm probably fixing to bail, unfortunately. I got a doctor.
All right, well, then real quickly, I want to throw another thing out there, just a completely different direction towards 2020's 2A activists. Hunting. If someone were to come along in a conversation at a place where they don't normally talk about firearms, doesn't matter where it is, the auto parts store, the community swimming pool, and it's a couple of parents watching their kids swim and they're just chatting or whatever, waiting in line at the doctor because Clover's going tomorrow, whatever, right? And somebody says, you know what I don't like about hunting is the fact that it kills all the land for hunting or for animals. The bad thing about hunters is, they destroy the land that the animals live on, and soon we won't have any animals anymore. I don't think very many people I don't think that you have to have someone who's a knowledgeable hunter in order to challenge that person's position, if they were inclined to say something to the effect of what we all know. Hunters are actually responsible for a lot of the conservation efforts, or at least tasked with their taxes, or tasked with providing most of the conservation efforts. Many of the people tasked, or the government employees who deal with wildlife, deal with all the wildlife issues, all the different levels, are either hunters themselves, or again are paid for by hunters, taxes and stuff. So I don't think you need to be a hunter for that at this point in the world, 2019, for that to be that awareness to be out there. Now, I'm not suggesting that every person in the country understands that, because I understand, that that's not the case. But what I'm getting at is, are y'all with me on that? That if someone were to come out and proclaim something outrageous about hunting, that even a regular person might be able to tell them. Or like, let's say another example, if someone were to say, in the United States, you can just go buy a full auto machine gun on the streets. Even though we hear that all the time, we know that most people that we know understand that that is not the case, just because they understand it, right? They've lived long enough, they understand it. Are you guys with me? So those started as anti-gun campaigns. Like there was a massive anti-gun campaign using hunting and all the fallacies about hunting. Blaze Orange is the consequence of that. As a defense against the social persecution of hunting, Blaze Orange was invented and adopted and suggested, and it was petitioned, and it wasn't an easy thing, and all of a sudden it's just part of us now. And you see somebody in hunter's orange, you know it's a hunter. It's part of our society now. It's just part of our culture. I'm just kind of throwing some different angles at it, that those things happened, and we're looking at them like E Honda with perfect 2020 hindsight, right? But since we're going into 2020, let's remember that we're not restricted to that anymore. Our opportunity to understand what's happening in our culture and our society and stuff is both ways now. We can communicate with that who we are watching. We can listen to those who we talk to, right? So we have both way communications. I suggest we have the same thing. I've always used that analogy that SHOT Show started out where they couldn't even take pictures, and then digital pictures were okay. And now we fast forward through all the years of hassle, and now they anticipate and kind of expect us to bring digital video. And the next hurdle will be whether or not we go live streaming straight from the floor. But the technology wasn't pushed on them. It was simply adapted to and requested, and eventually either grudgingly given or actively pursued. But we've changed the way that the industry views our ability to get information about us through SHOT Show. We can do that same thing looking forward into 2020. If we want to change the way things are in the future, right? If we want Hunter's Orange to be a common thing, we don't have to wait to talk about how it became a common thing. We can effort now to do things, and I think that only takes, some whatever creative ways to work together. I just want to throw that point out there before you left. What about that aspect of looking forward as maybe some campaigns that like a Carrie Sloan type of concept, where maybe we come up with some stuff going into 2020 that we can all sort of effort on and see what could be accomplished by many voices, repeating the same thing, if it's a hashtag or a campaign or something. But can there be a new Hunter's Orange? Can there be a new, hunters or conservationists movement? I know you got to go, so just hurry up and answer that real quick.
I know that, yeah, right. Let me just throw an answer out there real quick. Yeah, I don't know. From a hunters or conservationist standpoint, I don't know. But the concept is solid. And I like that.
Oh, yeah, and I didn't mean the angle of hunting. Sorry, I was just using that as an example.
Yeah, and that's why I said I like the concept. And I like the idea of, I don't know what we would come up with, but that would take a brainstorming session with, hopefully more people than the three that are here, since this thing holds 30 or whatever you said, and you sent those invites out. But getting a lot of input from a lot of different angles would be nice. But it would be taking something. I guess what you're talking about is more I'm trying to wrap my head around, honestly, exactly what you're getting at.
Well, again, the idea that if we look backwards in time, no one sat down and said, you know what, in the future, one way that we can keep our hunting rights or our gun rights is to inform the world about how good hunters are. But instead, Ducks Unlimited happened,
and all kinds of wildlife stuff happen. The condor, things
Right.
happen, and the result is afterwards we can live in a world where if somebody says hunters are not conservationists, most people understand that that's the opposite of the case. That most people understand that conservation in this country, at least, is almost paid for by hunters. We're not quite at the point where people understand that big game hunting pays for things overseas, but that comes up when people talk about stuff now. It's not completely unknown. But I guess the other one was the Hunter's Orange. When they came up with Hunter's Orange, it was a resistance to that whole thing, but it's become ubiquitous or synonymous with hunting. And it wasn't always like that. Back in the olden days, hunters, remember, wore red plaid, or they wore beaver head pelts. I mean, hunters have always had a different look until very recently we are hunter orange. And that isn't just a consequence of safety. That was a consequence of persecution against guns based on hunting. And that's just something that nobody pays attention to. It was one of the NRA's positive things, in the 70s, early 80s. And it just gets overlooked because we like to say FUD, FUD, FUD. But anyway, I was just getting to that concept that these hunter orange type of campaigns that are now, were just commonplace. They were never originally, nobody had the foresight to go, hey, you know what we could do? In 2019, everyone's going to know hunter's orange, and here's how we're going to get there. Nah, they were just trying anything they could. It was the swinging punches, and this one landed, and it just stuck around, and people stuck, everybody rang with everybody, and we've kept it. But I guess what my question is, I'm using that as an example. Is there a way that we can want the result of something as common as hunter's orange? Like everyone just knows that the reason we have such a safe country is because there's a lethal consequence to violence. And that is due to the fact that these little tiny machines let a little old lady be as lethal as anybody else. And because that's unknown, and because we have laws that allow the bad guy to have no clue who can defend themselves lethally, we basically have no crime. And that's really the whole point of it all. And if we could get that to be commonplace, where somebody comes along and says, guns are bad, boom, the little old lady on the street, the little kid at school can all say to them, guns aren't bad, it's the bad guys that are bad. If we want that goal, how do we set ourselves up to have that instead of always just looking backwards and saying, oh, hunter's safety orange seemed like a good idea? I guess I'm saying this a horrible way because I'm not good at saying shit quickly, but that's what I'm kind of throwing out there for 2020. How do we plan or strategize?
Taking an obvious truth and then
Making it commonplace or making it household?
making that the word where it's a given, right? Where it's obvious.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking, instead of just always waiting around, is there anything that we can do going into 2020? And I'm not saying we're going to accomplish it, but how awesome would it be if we all worked towards accomplishing it? What's going to be the world's going to be like if we all work towards something, and even if we failed, we all gain the skills needed to work together instead of coming up with the skills of how to outdo each other on a production value of how to sell soap or something.
Yeah, I think you play. I don't know. I think you play the hashtag game. I think that maybe, I don't know. Maybe there could be something like a meme war or something that you could utilize for something like that potentially, because memes are not really my thing, but they're definitely a thing. I don't know. There's some potential to push and stuff like that, like where where firearms are the equalizer. They are the reason that we have the safety that we have, and take some of the facts, right? Because it's one thing to, and that's I've thought about that for a while now. We've got to move away from a position to where we talk about the facts and the numbers. Well, the fact is that blah blah blah. The research says that blah blah blah. So that stuff would be better received. There's better ways to package that, I guess is what I'm saying, right?
There has
it's
to
still
be,
facts,
because we
it's still
haven't
true, I
won.
get it. It's still, they really can't dispute it. But there's a difference between they can't dispute it and it's more palatable for them to accept as common sense, or that it's obvious or whatever.
They might accept it,
And
but
finding ways to repackage some of that.
exactly,
maybe.
like they might accept it, but how can they repeat it, or are they inclined to repeat
Right.
it?
Right. Are they going to remember it? right?
Yeah.
Well, 33% of
Maybe we
all
just got it
kids
somehow
have
there
very
with.
suicide. Well, you're remembering numbers and all kinds of crap. I mean, is there coming up with a nice, cool, palatable way to package some of that stuff, and then everybody getting on the same page with using it. It's the same way. It would be the same thing as the way the anti-gunners love to co-opt words, right? Like assault, it was assault rifle, and then it was assault weapon, and that sort of thing.
Sure.
And,
Common
okay,
sense.
well, it's neither one, but that's what they use. But that's easily palatable. It's easier to accept that than it is our definitions of. Well, no, it's not, because here's the difference. Blah, 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 So maybe the thing is, well, that's an assault weapon. Well, okay. Maybe we need to put all the guns in prison, man, if they're assault weapons. Why are we talking about confiscation? But they need to, police need to put them in jail. They need to stand trial if they're killing people. If it's the guns that are killing people, or I don't know. I mean, I'm just spitballing, and unfortunately, 2:30 in the morning.
No, I didn't expect anybody to have an answer. Well, except roll call. He's just not doing it. But no, I just was throwing it out there.
I go back to what I said. Just package it in such a way that's a little more easy for them to absorb, and it's easy for them to regurgitate. That's another thing that they being the anti-gunners, that's another thing that they have going for them, is all of these words that they co-op and the catchphrases and the facts that are twisted or whatever it might be, right?
Well, it's not going for them. It's
really
they intentionally engineered it that way. They build it that way. I mean, they use that. They utilize those strategies or tactics. Yeah.
Super easy to regurgitate, and we just have not. They're ahead of the game, unfortunately. And you're right. I think we have to develop some tactics in that realm.
And I suspect we've been successful. It's just we're not thinking about it right now because of, like you say, the lateness or whatever. With that being said,
and there's bigger things. I mean, when you think about some of the people like, for example, Yehuda, who does the shirts, and some of his his plays on words and some of the stuff he does is pretty entertaining, right? So I mean, somebody like that could be great at taking a talking point of ours and maybe putting it in a more palatable package. I mean, we've definitely got people within our reach.
You know who's going to do it?
Capable. All we've got to do is take the idea to them and say, hey, here's the deal. The gun is the great equalizer. The gun is the reason that crime is as low as it is, or whatever.
I've already figured it out.
How do you put that out to the masses, right?
You saying a bunch of wrong things has allowed me to come up with the answer to all of this. So you're on the right track, but it ain't going to be Yuta. He's too much of a white dude. So instead, it's going to be a young female competitive shooter. It's not going to be a victim, although victims have all the rights, and obviously the civil right of being able to protect yourself is one of the things that they intentionally and struggle to remove focus from. But not, in other words, I'm not causing any dislike on that aspect of gun owners' rights. But as someone who isn't being exploited, who isn't standing on tragedy as a foundation, or so that it can't be attacked from that angle, but instead the recreational, instead the competitive, instead the whatever it's called when you're able to get to college based on some sort of a scholarship or something, based on those kind of positive, based on the teamwork and this competition, the sports aspect of it, based on the mechanical, the engineering, based on the chemistry, all of those aspects of the guns, right? And a young female is going to be, again, bulletproof from all the, you look too much like what we like to say gun owners are, or used to be when we like to pigeonhole them or whatever it's called. Anyway, I think that's going to be our answer, is somebody who we're not expecting is going to come out and give them an argument that can't be, what's the word that they usually use? They parry it, or they, discount it.
it'll be a resolve that they can't, and it'll be an attack or a direction that they've never countered before, and it'll catch them all off guard, and they'll look like bullies forever suggesting it. I think that'll be our, if not our only, it'll be one of, that'll be an angle that we've never seen before. It's inevitable. I mean, you barely touch the surface with your shining the light on the competitive shooters, but just look at Instagram, look at the world, look at a gun show, look at the way manufacturers create. There's just too many girls out there, and girls teach their daughters, period. And try stopping an American young lady from doing something. That's how the whole world's changed, literally, right?
I think that some of the phrases that you guys use are catchy, and I think people like Clover said should use these when they post a picture on social media. Like we are the gun lobby, or we are the new media. I think when these great phrases are thought of and they're implemented, I think everybody should use them. Just like everybody should use Hunter Horn. That way everybody can see each other when they're out in the woods wandering like Hansel and Gretel. I mean, I think these catchphrases are important. And when you do use these platforms that you don't like, but you use those phrases, they catch on, and then more people use them. And then every time somebody posts a picture, that phrase, "We are the gun lobby," or you are your first responder. I've heard that one going on right now, which I believe in. I think those things are important, and the more and more you use them, and I think when they get these kind of things in there, when they keep on reiterating them, I think that's what we have to do with certain things to get them to stick. It's hard to get things to stick like that, to make it the big word trend, to make it the trend, to make it the baby Yoda of the next cycle. So I think using these words every day and then implementing them in your everyday life and saying them out in the world, just not so much on social media, but out in the world when you're having discussions with your friends, when you guys are trading patches, or you're at SHOT Show. While you guys go into SHOT Show, start using these trending things like you are your first responder. We are the new media. These things, and start implementing them into the community. So not only are you saying it, this person's saying it. Not only is Clover saying it, Ghost is saying it. Now Pincus is saying it. Now these people that are riding high on the hog, now they're saying it. And that's how these things stick. It's hard to do it. I understand what you guys are talking about, but those are my two thoughts since it's getting late.
Good ones. I'm going to throw in there Clover's.
I'm gonna jump. So it's been a great conversation.
Oh, you're going to miss the best part. You're going to miss the best part. So anyway, Clover's thing is that the mortar, the people that are the audiences are the people that facilitate the movement of stuff from one good idea to another platform for the good idea to get resonance on. So everyone's involved in that, not just watching people and watching the spread, but be part of the spread. Lastly, nobody's brought up this, that if you remove the NFA, right, then we can have guns like Batman that have grappling hooks in them, and then it'll be real easy to get guns in the hand of everybody. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, handicaps will know no bounds, right?